Hello there everyone, welcome back to my channel Fanfiction podcast. Today we will start a new story about if Bel traveled back in time and became the son of Zeus Familia. Before we start, please like, share, subscribe and comment in the comment section below. A fresh start. Like all good stories, this one started with a dream and a promise. A dream filled with adventures and the glory that comes with them, and a promise to become the last hero. A young man would set out on his own to achieve these goals and would make many friends and admirers along this journey of his. In a perfect world, the young man would have achieved all he set out to do. He would have completed his adventures, saved the heroine and slew the dragon, and in doing so would have ushered in a new age of peace and prosperity, like none that has ever come before it. But this is not a perfect world, and that is not this story. This is a story of crushed dreams and broken promises. The young man did set out to achieve his goals, and he succeeded for the most part. He went on grand adventures and fought terrible monsters that would make lesser man faint. He did make many friends, and the whole city admired him and his great deeds. He did save the heroine from herself, but the final challenge, well, like all those who came before him, he failed to slay the dragon. This is a story that begins with fire and brimstone, with the hero watching the city he's called home for the past year burned to the ground, and that is where our protagonist finds himself, a few kilometers away from it, watching in horror and feeling powerless at the turn of events. Just a few weeks ago, Grandchild was at the top of the world. He had everything he could have ever wanted, a family to call his own and someone that he could see spending the rest of his life with. Now, he was on his knees with tears falling down his cheeks, as he was forced to watch everything he had built turn to ash and dust. In the distance he could see what was bringing all this ruin and death, and just for a moment he met its one black eye, and he swore. He saw the joy that it held as it walked through Rio, basking in the destruction it had wrought upon the city that was once called the center of the world. There was only one building left standing in its wake, and Bel watched with wide eyes as this monstrosity slowly marched towards the last vestige of hope the world had. No, gods, please don't. Bel could only beg from the distance, praying that some god would interfere from the heavens, giving divine justice to this creature of blackness. But no, interference came from the heavens, and Bel couldn't hear the voices of the people around him, trying to get his attention. All his attention was on the dragon as it slowly raised itself on its hind legs and put its arms against the Tower of Babel, and with nothing but a roar, the tower that had stood for centuries came to a fall. Dozens of pillars of light lit up the sky, as whatever deities were left in Rio had gone to the tower to seek refuge with the last of their children. All that did was prolong the inevitable, as the dragon stood tall and proud, illuminated by the ascending gods and goddesses, laughing at the chaos it was causing, relishing in the misery and pain. On this day, Grandchild was the first mortal in nearly 1,000 years to bear witness to the dungeon being unleashed upon Genkai, and was it a sight to bear witness to, for it was as if the dungeon had held its breath for all those centuries, and with a single exhale, hell was let loose upon the world once again. The sky was littered with untold dragons, sirens, phoenixes, and whatever flying monster inhabited the dungeon. Minotaurs, mammoth fools, bloodsaurus, and many more rushed through the legs of the dragon, making their way towards whatever poor souls were still alive. Bel couldn't help but feel guilty for whatever fate awaited the rest of Genkai, the untold amount of death and destruction that will be brought against mortal and divine alike, all because he failed. Bel finally snapped out his stupor when two hands grabbed his face and tore his attention away from the devastation. The face that he saw was of his goddess, Hestia, tears streaming down her face as she looked at her first and now last child. She looked ragged, her pristine white dress was dirty and torn, her eyes were swollen and red, no doubt from all the crying. But in her eyes still held a shred of defiance. She would not give up hope just yet, even when all looked lost. Bel, it's done. We were able to finish it just in time. Hestia grabbed Bel's hands and lifted him up and slowly walked towards the last group of gods that had escaped Rio. In a small circle stood 5 deities and one mortal, Zeus, Loki, Freya, Uranus, and one more that Bel had never seen before. He was wearing a 3-piece suit, all black, with a stopwatch in his right hand and a book in his left. The one mortal was none other than Ais Wallenstein, who looked worse than Hestia by far. Ais only had her right eye open, Her left arm was shattered, beyond repair by any means that was available to them. She was barely conscious, no doubt, her status being the only thing keeping her in the world of the living. The other gods were talking back and forth, discussing when would be a good time to go back, something that Bel knew nothing about. But when Ais saw him and Hestia approaching, she left Loki's side and hobbled over to Bel, where she collapsed against him. "Hey, stay with me now. Whatever the gods are doing seems to be done. We just need a few more minutes." Bel whispered in Araz's ear, holding her steady with his arms. "I know, I'm just tired, that's all. Just tired of all this." Ais whispered back, while Bel couldn't see them. He felt his chest get wet as Ais quietly cried into it. Bel wasn't the only one that had lost his family. Ais had lost her family to the dragon for the second time in her life. Bel grabbed Ais by her right hand and slowly walked over to the rest of group, which got quiet as they approached. Zeus was the first to approach the couple, putting a hand on Bel's shoulder and giving a light squeeze. Zeus was mostly unharmed by appearances. He just looked sad and proud at the same time at his grandson. "I'm sorry, Bel. This isn't the life I wanted for you. I always wanted you to be happy and become a great hero with a harem of his own dash dot." Zeus couldn't finish his sentence as Hestia jabbed him in the ribs with her elbow, eliciting a sharp hiss from Zeus. "What I'm getting at is that I'm sorry for all this. Maybe I should have raised you differently, with different dreams." Zeus looked down at the ground, with the weight of not only losing his family to the dragon, but now his own grandson is suffering from his sins. "It's okay, Gramps. I wouldn't have wanted to be raised any differently anyway. This has been a good life, even if it ends this way," Bel said with a smile that could still raise the spirits of those around him. Bel and Ais continued to the rest of the group. "Except this isn't the end, Bel, not by a long shot." Zeus couldn't help but think as he watched the couple walk away before rejoining them. "Well, if it isn't itty bittis brat, with my Azupu." Loki couldn't help but grit her teeth, seeing their hands locked. But with a sigh, all that possible tension was gone. Loki lost that battle a long time ago. No use in wasting energy, not when the world is ending. Not when she lost all her children, her home, her booze, for fuck's sake. Loki was heartbroken. Everything she had built for 30 years, gone. Nothing was left except for Ais, and even Loki was grateful for that much. "Loki." Ais looked at her goddess with a slight pout. I know. Old habits die hard, ya know." Loki replied with a shrug and a smile. "Besides, I'd rather see ya2 lovebirds than look at this yanda bitch another minute," Loki said with a flat face while sticking the middle finger in Freya's direction. "How very crass of you, Loki," Freya said while raising an eyebrow at Loki, before looking at where Bel and Ais were connected, and giving a sigh of regret of what could have been. I'm very happy that you two have found love, even at the worst at times it seems," Freya said, giving a very much trying smile. "Enough talking, it's time," Uranos finally said, making all attention go towards him, and the mysterious god next to him. "Kronos, did we finally decide on a good time?" The former god of Rio said to the now revealed god. "Oh yes, we did, the perfect time," the god Kronos said, snapping his stopwatch closed before opening the book and presenting it to Bel. "Now my dear boy, this process is very simple and very quick. All you need to do is press your hand into the book, state your name, and all of your current problems will go away," Kronos said with a flourish of his arms and a smile. "Although you might want to hurry, our dear friend over, I do believe, can smell what is going on over here," Kronos said, his smile faltering, causing Bel to snap his neck back, revealing the dragon beginning to run towards them, murder his one eye. "Where are you going, little hero? Surely you wouldn't consider running from little old me." The dragon roared out towards the group, crushing whatever monster got in his way. Seeing this, Bel went to place his right hand in the book, but before he could, Ais pulled his face towards her own, locking lips together, before separating regretfully. "I love you, Bel. Promise me you'll save me again," Ais said, looking at her hero one last time. "What do you mean again? What does this book do, Lord Kronos?" Bel questioned the god he had only met mere moments ago. "This book will, in layman terms, allow you to fix the mistakes we've made in this timeline. Of course, only you will know what happened, thus it's up to you to do it right, no pressure of course," Kronos replied with a sly smile. But dash dot. Before Belle could interject and ask more questions, this time Hestia pulled his attention away. Promise me, Belle, that you'll find me again, that we'll be a familiar once more, please. Promise, don't leave me alone. Hestia said while more tears fell. Oh, how Belle hated to see Hestia cry. I promise I will fix this. I swear I will. Belle shouted to the heavens, vowing that this won't happen again. Do it, young Belle Cranel, we are running out of time. Urano said while staring at the encroaching dragon. He'd be upon them in less than a minute. Belle took one last look at the people around him. Loki gave him a thumbs up and a wink. Freya blew a kiss towards him for old time's sake. Zeus gave him a weathered smile, while both Hestia and Ais gave him a smile and a nudge towards the book. Belle placed his right hand on the book. New. The dragon roared. He was right there, and with that roar he unleashed a torrent of fire towards the group. It never reached them. Belle Cranel. Belle said, and with that white light surrounded them all, and for a second time stopped before Belle felt a yank on his very being, pushing him downwards. All the air left his body before waking up with a jolt in a bed that was a little too small for his frame. Belle sat there for a second, before getting nauseous and pushing himself out of bed to the nearest trash can and hurling whatever it was that was in his stomach. Belle dry heaved for a minute, after emptying the contents of his stomach, before being able to collect himself and looking around at where he was at. What he saw shocked him to the core. He knew exactly where he was at, but couldn't believe it. My old room. Belle was astonished at his current location, before noticing the tight clothing that he had on. How old am I supposed to be right now? Belle didn't waste time ripping off the clothing he had on, before sneaking to the restroom and looking in the mirror. Belle wasn't exactly surprised by what he saw. He looked pretty much as he did before he got sent back to whenever he is. His refined body from dungeon diving was still the same, along with all the scars he had from that same dungeon diving. Belle quickly deduced that he needed to find out when he got dropped off, and more importantly some clothes as well. Belle quickly scanned his old home looking for his grandpa, but not hearing anything, he looked inside his grandpa's room and not sensing him, he went inside and quickly nabbed himself a shirt and pants. While they didn't fit him exactly, it was much better than what he had on. Finally having a moment to relax and the adrenaline leaving his body, did Belle finally realize something. I feel so weak, I must have lost my Falna. Belle said through ragged breaths. He hadn't felt this weak in almost a year, not since Hestia. The sudden thought of his goddess made Belle choke up, and then all the others came into thought. Lily, Welf, Haraheim, Mikoto, Ryu, Ais, and everyone else. Belle couldn't help but slide down against the wall and cry. He didn't know how long he sat there, but he knew that crying wouldn't fix the situation he was in, so he mustered his emotions together and got back up. He continued to peek around the house trying to figure out when he was before coming across a picture of himself and his grandpa. I look young, maybe around 6 or so. How far back did I get sent? Belle couldn't help but wonder. Every answer he found only led to him asking more questions. He looked outside and noticed it was night time. Grandpa must be out and about, probably at the tavern drinking, and trying to swoon some of the village ladies. Typical behavior. Belle decided for the time being to take a sit at the table and wait and gather his thoughts and emotions, as well as come up with the necessary questions. Belle didn't have to wait too long before he heard the rustling of keys at the door attempting to unlock it. It took a few attempts and Belle pondered getting up and opening the door himself before his grandpa found success and came stumbling inside. With a whistle and a skip in his step, Zeus himself lightly placed the keys on the dresser by the front door and started to walk to his room. Belle stared at his back the entire time, pondering how this was the former god that led one of the strongest familiars for near 1,000 years. The stare had its intended effect. Zeus went as stiff as a board and slowly rose to his full height. Are you here to harm me or my grandson? Zeus asked calmly, but Belle could tell that he was getting ready to do whatever was necessary to protect himself, and what he imagined. Still, his grandson sleeping in his bed. I am not, no, was the reply Zeus received, which was not a lie. Is my grandson still asleep in his bed unharmed? Was the next question. He must not be able to recognize my voice. Then again, if I'm supposed to be 6, he wouldn't be able to tell it's me. Belle thought before giving an answer. He is unharmed. but he is not asleep in his bed. Zeus gave a tick, perhaps thinking what he can use as a weapon besides unleashing his divinity and potentially getting sent back to heaven. Where is he? Because so help me, I will vaporize you before I get sent back to Tenkai. Zeus did a spin quickly facing whoever was sitting at his table, ready to fight with everything at his disposal. That's a very easy question to answer. I'm right here, Grandpa. Bell replied before lighting the candle on the table. Bell had heard the term before but never really experienced it, until now, but Zeus's face was truly priceless. Zeus was absolutely gobsmacked at the young man. Before him, eyes wide and mouth wide open, staring at this young man's snow-white hair and his rubellite eyes, he couldn't deny the striking resemblance between the young boy he's been taking care for the past near 7 years, but the figure before him was an impossibility that couldn't exist. That's not possible. My Bell is only a child, with some winters behind him. Zeus was left confused at the situation he found himself in, while he sensed no lies, the idea that somehow his grandson had grown twice his age in a single night seemed impossible. I am him, Zeus. Bell's stern reply made the elder god stutter, but only for a moment. Or, rather, I am what he would have become had time taken its natural course. Bell. Zeus couldn't help but ask waringly, for while he sensed no lie, he still didn't truly want to believe in who was sitting before him. Yeah, it's me, Gramps, Bell Cranel. Bell's reply was dry, the weight of the world coming down upon his shoulders in that instance, but almost as if fate was feeling particularly feisty. That night, upon Bell reciting his name, that very book that brought Bell here appeared out of thin air before him on the table, shocking both him and Zeus at its sudden appearance. What in the gods is that thing, Bell? Zeus said, taking a step back away from the object. This is the book that brought me here, Grandpa. Why? What's wrong with it? Bell replied, eyebrow raised at Zeus's behavior towards this seemingly harmless object. That book, my dear grandson, reeks of unsealed arcanum. Zeus had momentarily calmed himself before taking a seat at the table across from Bell. Give it here, let me examine it. See if I can't find out what exactly is going on here. Outstretching his hand towards, beckoning for the book. After a moment, Bell hands over the book. The second it touches Zeus' fingertips, it gives him goosebumps. Steeling himself, Zeus opens the book and starts reading its contents, page by page. Zeus reads and gasps at what is written in it, before finally closing it and looking at Bell in his eyes. Well, what is it? Bell couldn't help but ask, both worried and excited at the expressions Zeus was having while reading the book. Zeus sat silently for what felt like eternity to Bell, before giving his answer. It's a chronicle, Bell, more specifically, your chronicle. Zeus's reply was more straightforward than Bell was expecting, before placing the book on the table. What exactly does that mean, Zeus? Bell said, before taking the book back and trying to read the contents, which was pointless, as the wording were in the language of the gods. It's the story of Bell Cranel, everything that you have accomplished, every victory, every loss, no detail spared. It is, in essence, your life story, was all Zeus said, before getting up, heading to the kitchen, grabbing himself a bottle of wine, a glass, and taking his seat once again, pouring himself a full glass and drinking back half before stopping and looking back at Bell. Bell, I need you to know that only time gods are allowed access to chronicles. Interfering at all in time is strictly against the rules, so with that being said, what time god did this? Zeus finished asking before drinking the second half of his glass and pouring another glass full. I believe his name was Kronos dash. Was all Bell could get out before Zeus cracked the glass he was holding. Oh, Grandpa. Bell couldn't help but stare at his grandfather's unexpected reaction. Out of all the time gods, Uranos had to ask him for help. Zeus couldn't help but rub his eyebrows at the thought of what favor the time god asked of the elder god for his help. Still, Bell, color me impressed at your feats, young man, level 7 in a year. Zeus couldn't help but feel a sense of pride for raising such a strong adventure. I mean by the gods, defeating a Minotaur at level 1, winning a war game at level 2, fighting the same Minotaur at level 3, winning another war game at level 4 dash. Grandpa. Zeus's rant was interrupted with a sharp kick to the shin from Bell, drawing a sharp gasp and a questioning look. Let's not worry about my past at the moment. We should be discussing my future. Oh yeah, of course, Still, I can't believe you got so far with tits with legs dashed. Zeus immediately regretted the words he used to describe Hestia, for he felt an aura of death wash over him. From Bel. Do not call my goddess that. Bel said calmly with a smile on his face. Okay, yes, I apologize for my phrasing. Won't happen again. Zeus replied, sweating profusely at Bel's sudden change of behavior. So, your future, how would you like to proceed from here? Zeus asked, taking a sip from his wine glass. Give me your blessing, Grandpa. Bel's answer was rather straightforward, which immediately caused Zeus to spit up the wine he had in his mouth. What did you just say, Bel? Zeus asked after getting over his sudden choking. I need a Falna, Grandpa, and I need one as soon as possible so that I may begin training and preparing myself. I have almost 7 years to prepare, and I can't afford to be lazy and do nothing. Bel's reply was cold and calculated, almost as if he was back in the dungeon, and he needed to make a decision and stick with it, no matter the consequences. Zeus, on the other hand, was completely taken aback at the request and had to swallow the lump that formed in his throat. Bel, I can't. I swore I would never dash. Zeus tried to make any excuse he knew to avoid doing what was requested of him. Zeus. There are hundreds of gods and goddesses throughout Genkai. I'm sure any of them would take you in dash. Zeus. Aura Rio would be perfect for you. You're a strong young man dash. Zeus. Bel finally snapped at his adoptive grandfather, stopping his stupor. It has to be you. Grandpa, I don't want any other Falna on my back other than Hestia's, but she has yet to descend from Tenkai, and I couldn't stomach betraying her by going to some other god or goddess that I don't know or that I do know and having them place their Falna upon my back. But I can't just wait for her to descend. That'll take years, years that I can't just do nothing with. At the end of the day, it has to be you, because you're the only god that I can trust with my life and my future. Bel. Zeus was still hesitant, but his will was faltering. I need this, Grandpa, please. For the first time that night, Zeus saw that wall of Bel's crack. It started with a single tear rolling down his cheek, but soon Bel was shaking from the tears. I lost them all, my friends, my familia, my home, all the people that I grew to cherish and love. I watched them all burn. I watched Aura Rio burn and the tower fall, and I was powerless to stop it. I must get strong, Grandpa. I swore that I wouldn't allow that to happen again. Please, grant me the strength to make my dreams come true. Zeus stood up from where he sat, gave one more look at Bel, his beloved grandson, watching him shed tears that he wished he never saw in his immortal life, before coming to his conclusion in his heart. He turned around and marched straight to his room, locking eyes on the chest that he kept at the foot of his bed, and quickly fished the key he hid underneath his nightstand before opening the chest. Zeus hadn't taken much with him the night he took Bel from Aura Rio, enough Valis to buy some land and the materials to build a comfortable house, with some left over to buy food and seed to plant, clothes and whatnot, with a tiny amount for an emergency. But it wasn't the Valis Zeus was reaching for, no, it was something from his past that he would have preferred stayed there. It didn't take long for Zeus to find what he was looking for, and even then, he refused to look at it, for it bore the shame he had avoided for 7 long years. Zeus sat there just for a moment, before hearing Bel starting to quiet down. Only then did he have the nerve to look at the sword that was resting between his hands. It was a beautiful sword, crafted by both Hephaestus and Goibnu, a truly outstanding feat in between itself, for the two godly smiths had never forged a sword together before. But Zeus was a special case, and demanded special request. He had it made to honor his captain, Maxim. It was to be the crown piece of the Zeus Familia, to celebrate their victory over the one-eyed black dragon. But that victory never came. The sword never met the hands of the one who was meant to wield it. Maxim died in the clash against the dragon, never knowing the gift that was intended for him. Zeus doesn't know why he kept it all this time. He swore he would never bless another child again, never take on another son. Even now he was waiting for his last child to pass away, knowing that he wouldn't have to feel that pain again. But in this instance, he was okay with the thought of having kept this sword, for it would finally meet the hands of one who Zeus thought was worthy of wielding it. Forgive me, my sons in heaven, for I am about to break my vow that I made to all of you. Allow me to commit one last sin. Zeus prayed for forgiveness, and as he allowed himself to shed one tear, He stood up and walked back to where he left Belle at the kitchen table, seeing his grandson with his head in his hands, before watching him look up and grow wide-eyed at him and the sword he was carrying. "Grandpa." Belle couldn't help but be shocked at his grandfather's sudden reappearance. He had thought when he abruptly stood up and left him, that was his refusal to grant Belle his blessing. But staring at him now, with that determined look in his eyes, and the sword by his hip, Belle was reconsidering his previous thought. "I will do it, Belle. I will take you on as my son, one last blessing. I assume you know what must be done." Belle gave a nod and took off his shirt, which once Zeus saw the scars that littered his upper torso, he couldn't help but wince at the experiences that Belle had to go through to gain them, but he would soon find out. "Oh, my poor boy, what kind of life did I make you go through?" Zeus knew why Belle followed the life of an adventurer. He had instilled the desire to become a hero into him since he was a young child, always in the hope that Belle would become the hero the world needed. Zeus never considered the consequences of such a lifestyle, but staring at Belle's bare body, he was beginning to understand what he put him through to realize his own selfish desires. Once Belle took a sitting position in front of Zeus, did he unsheathe the sword for its very first time. He had never once seen the work of what the two smithing gods crafted. He had wanted Maxim to be the first to draw the sword. But upon staring at the blade, did Zeus admit this blade was truly a masterpiece fit for a god? "Are you ready, Belle?" Zeus asked one last time, making sure this is the path his grandson wanted to take. "I'm ready, Zeus. Bless me with your Falna, give me your strength and let us forge a new future." Zeus, with full commitment, made an incision against the palm of his left hand, letting multiple drops of blood hit Belle's back, lighting up the entire room in the glow of a Falna being bestowed upon a mortal, and for a moment, on a cold winter night, the windows of the house lit up the night sky. Belle, upon feeling the multiple drops of blood, looked back and saw the cut on his grandpa's hand. "Grandpa, you only had to prick your finger, no need to make such a big cut." Belle quickly responded, worried about his grandfather's well-being. "It's fine, my boy. It's tradition, really. For nearly 1,000 years, every time I have had a new son join my familia, I would make a cut across the palm of my hand for the first time of giving a Falna. For what father wouldn't shed blood for his son?" Zeus smiled sweetly at the thought. He remembered all his sons. For centuries he had blessed one after another, always. Whenever he brought a new son into the family, his other boys would all watch and cheer and celebrate after every single one, welcoming their new brother into the family. Now it was just two of them left, and there was no one here to cheer Belle into his family like all his other sons. Zeus fought back the tears that threatened to fall. He had to take care of Belle's status. "Now, Belle, I can give you two options, and you must decide which one you want." Zeus asked Belle, not knowing which one Belle would go with. "Okay, well, what are they?" Belle asked inquisitively. "I can just copy your status onto a sheet of paper and leave it at that, or I can peer more into your status and see what exactly happened in your previous timeline so that I may get a good idea of what exactly is going on." Zeus was hoping Belle would pick the latter but didn't know exactly what Belle's comfort would be with that, and his worry grew as Belle said nothing for a minute before giving an answer. "It would be best if you know what's going on, that way we can plan around situations that will inevitably happen." Belle answered honestly, which made Zeus happy with the answer. "Perfect, this will only take a few seconds, so bear with me, Belle." Belle gave a nod, and Zeus descended into Belle's status, peering at everything and anything he could, learning as much as possible, before deciding he knew enough and stopping. Zeus grabbed a nearby piece of paper and copied Belle's sheet onto it. "Well, I must admit, Belle, your life was absolutely dreadful. Like, wow, you really went through the ringer. Like, I knew Freya was crazy, but holy shit, no wonder you don't want to go to Rio." Zeus was scratching his head at the episode that was Freya. "Thanks, Grandpa, that makes me feel great about my life." Belle could only say before putting his shirt back on. "But I mean, it wasn't all bad. You really fulfilled the dream. You had a whole harem at your beck and call, Belle. Congratulations are in order, my boy." Zeus was smiling widely at his grandson's success in the arts of seducing women. "Grandpa, please." Belle couldn't help but blush at the unwanted praise before reaching for the paper that was currently holding his new status as a new member of Zeus' Familia, which was immediately yanked further from Belle's hand, drawing a confused look from Belle. Not quite yet, Belle. Let's save the big reveal for later, okay? For now, be happy knowing that you are the single most powerful one that has ever lived. Zeus gave the smuggest smile that he could muster at the moment. Oh, I'm sure, Gramps, that sounds fine, for now I guess. Belle didn't exactly like it, but he couldn't really argue with his grandpa. If you saw everything, you must have seen the last moments with the dragon. You saw it talking, didn't you? Belle answered quietly, scared of the implications of what that could mean. A conversation for later, Belle. I promise, it will be discussed, but for now, we have bigger fish to fry, yeah. Zeus put his hands on Belle's shoulders, trying to reassure him that everything is okay for the time being. Yeah, I guess we do, don't we? Belle gave a weak smile. So, you have my fauna. I assume next step would be to start fighting monsters. Obviously not in the dungeon, for multiple reasons. However, that doesn't really leave us with a lot of places. Belle, monsters on the surface don't give the same amount of excelia as those in the dungeon, so you'd be hard-pushed trying to gain anything meaningful. Zeus was speaking facts. Surface monster had gotten weaker over the centuries and would hardly help Belle grow like how he wanted to. There is one place where we can go where the monsters are up to par with dungeon monsters. Although I will admit, you will not like it. Belle said with a wince. Please enlighten me, my dear grandson. Tell me this grand place. Zeus replied by making a grandeur display. Dragon Valley. Belle all but whispered in the quiet house. Absolutely not, Belle. That place dash dot. Zeus tried to erase any thought of going there. Tried is the word. Is a hell hole, I know, but it's the only place aside from the dungeon that has strong monsters, and is far enough away from Rio or really anyone where I can train in relative isolation. I know you are aware of that skill, grandfather. It'll help me grow rapidly, but only if I'm fighting monsters above my level. Belle made a great point, and Zeus knew it, which made him grit his teeth even harder. You're going to get me killed, I swear, but you're not wrong. Dragon Valley would literally be the best place for you to go. That skill is truly wasted if we go anywhere else. Which reminds me, that skill is bonkers, Belle. I hope you know that. I mean, some of my children had outrageous skills themselves, but nothing like that. I can see how you got to level 7 in a year. I'm aware of how the skill is. It could quite literally cause wars if it got out, which is why being away from people would be best. Keep it low to the ground. If a random level 3 or 4 were to appear, it's not impossible, but much more acceptable than me heading to Rio and getting to level 7 again and cause all sorts of chaos. The world doesn't need any more chaos now, and if I'm caught up on my history, I do believe the world is literally in a horrible time. You're not wrong. Even out here, I still receive reports from Hermes about the state of affairs outside of our little village. It truly is a strong eat weak world we're currently living in. Zeus replied, giving a heavy sigh. Evolus? Belle asked worryingly. Ryu had told him all about them in the past. Yeah, Evolus. Both Belle and Zeus looked at one another, both realizing that eventually they'd have to confront the evils of today sooner or later. A worry for another day, grandfather. For now, let's focus on us and try to get prepared for the journey. Belle interjected, ending the previous conversation before it went somewhere that couldn't be dealt with at his current strength. Yes, let's do that. For now, we'll get you taken care of. Pack whatever clothes fits you from my room and pack all the food we can carry. That'll last a few days until we come across another village on the way north. You'll head out tonight and sleep at the waterfall near the village. I'll stay the night here and prepare the house. Come morning, I'll get our affairs in order and buy whatever supplies we need with the Valis we have left. Guess for the time being you'll have to be a mercenary. We can take on jobs on the way north, slay stray monsters and the like, get you some excelia and much-needed Valis. This journey will be long, and not without struggle, Belle, but we'll get through this together. We've both been through tougher. Zeus said as he clasped a hand over Belle's shoulder and gave a light squeeze, flashing a smile. Yeah, we really have been to hell and back, our Gramps. Belle for the first time that night gave Zeus that smile that could sway the hearts of women everywhere before heading off to begin packing for the journey. Zeus smiled to himself at the prospect of traveling with one of his children. He couldn't remember the last time he truly set out on a journey of this proportion, and for a fleeting moment, He felt that all his sons looked down at him from Tenkai, egging him on to write a new legend, with a new generation and more than likely, the last Zeus. Familia myth. Bell. Zeus called out to the young man before he started packing in earnest. Yeah, Grandpa. Bell was puzzled at the tone Zeus was giving him. He'd never heard it before. I wish your dad was here, to see you join my familia. It wasn't very often that one of my sons lived a life where he could have a son of his own, much less where that son would join my familia alongside his father. I'm sure he would be proud of you. You've grown into a fine young man. Zeus finished his statement by tossing the sword towards Bell. You're the new captain now, Bell. Do it justice. Bell caught the sword mid-air and couldn't help but feel gravity of the responsibility of what it means to be the captain of the Zeus familia, but for some reason, he felt calm, almost as if this could be the start of the change the future needs. I will, Grandpa, I swear I will. Bell replied, refusing to let the tears fall. He had too much to do, and the clock was already ticking. But later that night, when Bell was alone at the waterfall, did he truly let the tears fall? He cried for his losses, screamed at the top of his lungs for his familia, but no noise escaped that waterfall, until Bell finally let out all he could and fell asleep. Come daybreak, Bell was waiting for his grandfather, who soon appeared in the distance, with a horse carrying a few bags, along with a bow and some arrows. They discussed each other's roles. Bell was to be the hunter while they were out in the wilderness, hunting whatever game was reasonable for the two of them. He was also to take on jobs from villages as they came across them, hunting monsters or even clearing out bandit camps, while Zeus was to stay out of sight. The less people that saw him, the better. After eating breakfast and getting ready, they got themselves situated for what would be weeks on the road. Before setting off on the road, Bell had to ask Zeus something that's been gnawing at him since realizing what time he got sent back to. Grandpa, I have a question for you. Bell asked warily, not knowing how Zeus would take the question. Ask away, Bell. No question is dumb. Zeus gave his new familiar member a smile. Am I the only member you have left, Zeus? Bell asked while casting his eyes to the ground. Zeus said nothing for a moment before giving an answer. No, Bell, you're not the only son I have left in this world. Zeus knew where this question was going but was willing to wait for Bell to ask it. Does that mean? Bell left his question up in the air, not willing to ask it. Zeus gave Bell a sad smile, but one full of understanding. Yes, she's still alive, Bell. The statement made Bell's heart skip a beat before locking eyes with his god, before shutting his eyes tight, holding back tears. Now come on, Bell, this journey is long, best get to it. Zeus gave the horse a tap and off he went into the distance. Bell stood there for a moment taking in the conversation and what it all meant. Zeus had told him about her in his previous timeline, and now they could actually meet, if it was possible. Althea. Bell whispered her name into the wind which carried it away, far away. Before setting off after Zeus, ready for the journey ahead, no matter what came his way, he would get stronger. There was no other option. Almost as if fate was being funny in its own twisted way, that whisper went far, so far in fact, that it entered the ears of the one whose name it blew. In a kitchen far away was a man, cooking breakfast for himself and one he considered his last friend on the earth. He was rather enjoying cooking before hearing a glass hitting the floor shattering. Thinking his friend was having another episode, he quickly went to see what was wrong, only to find her perfectly fine, just wide-eyed staring out into the distance. Althea, is everything okay? The man known as Zard asked. Althea said nothing for a moment, only pondering if what she heard was true or not. Althea. Zard asked again, growing concerned, before finally hearing an answer, not pointed towards him, but towards the wind itself. Bell. The Journey North. Chapter Notes. So first off, I just wanted to say thanks to everyone who has read the first chapter, who bookmarked it and left me kudos, of course those who left comments. It means a lot to me, and I hope to continue write a good and fascinating story. I really want to address two things as of the moment. First is how I'm going to write Bell. As said before, Bell will be aged up in this story. In the MS, he went to Orario when he was 14. I sent him back 7 years, so when he gets to Orario now, he'll be 21. A very big difference in age and maturity. Now that does not mean I'm going to make Bell some dark knight, or an edgy character in general. Bell will still be rather himself, but as he travels the world, experiences the best and worst things the world has to offer, he'll change accordingly. We'll see him mature and act more his age, and we'll also see his morals change as he faces the reality that is the world of Danmachi, which in fairness is a terrible place. Which leads us to my second point. The tags in the story will change as more chapters come out, some good, some bad. The story is marked as explicit for a lot of reasons, but the harsh truth is that Danmachi has a lot of terrible things going on in it. Forced prostitution and slavery is like the more tamer stuff, and that stuff happens in Ororio, so imagine the shit that goes on outside of Ororio, which is where Bell is going to be for like 90% of this story, up until he permanently goes to Ororio. Even in this chapter, there was going to be a more heavy scene, but I elected to rewrite it. But you might be able to guess at where that scene could have taken place. If I feel a scene could maybe upset some people, or trigger some kind of past trauma, I will always make a disclosure beforehand in case you want to skip it. I think that's it for now, so sorry for taking up some time. I hope you enjoyed Chapter 2. See the end of the chapter for more notes. The morning of the departure, Zeus was busying himself. His night was, to say the least, hectic. First, his advances at the bar in the village were met with rejection once again, so he ended up heading home, where he discovered his 6-year-old grandson was now a young man. As if that wasn't the worst of his worries, he found out that his plans to defeat the dragon were pretty much mute at this point, so he needed to go back to the white board to figure that out. Unless Zeus looked at where Bell's status sheet laid the information on. There was breathtaking. Maybe I don't have to change too much, some adjustments here and there would be necessary, but Bell still could be the catalyst for the plan. Zeus hated himself for still bringing Bell into all this, even when he saw everything that Bell went through. But there was no other way. Marquia needed to come, no matter the sacrifices. I'm sorry, my boy, you'll be the queen piece in this game of chess, this terrible game that needs to be played, whether we like it or not. Zeus quickly finished grabbing the rest of the items he needed for the journey north, including the letter he finished writing that night. He took one last look at the home he had made for himself and Bell, realizing that they'll never come back here. With a heavy heart, he walked outside and stared at the rising sun, before turning around and locking the door for the last time. He rushed towards the village chief's house, banging on the door several times before getting an answer from the elderly man. It was clear that he had barely woken up and was making breakfast for himself. Zeus could smell the bacon from the doorway. Javier, what's got you so worked up this morning? The village chief couldn't help but feel worried given his old friend's face and the bags he was carrying. Zeus, what's wrong? Did something happen? Only one person in the village knew the identity of the man named Javier. The elderly man knew Zeus from back in the day when he was still a merchant coming and going from Ororio, but that was when he was a younger man, full of life. Something's come up, Eric. I can't tell you too much about it, old friend, but it has something to do with Bell. His fine but an unavoidable problem has arisen and needs to be taken care of immediately. Upon seeing a nod from Eric, Zeus quickly fished out the letter and a pair keys. Hermes should be coming soon. Give him this letter. It's full of instructions of what do with the house, among other things. Keep the house locked until then. The chief swiftly took the letter and keys before looking at Zeus one more time, being surprised when Zeus brought him into an embrace. Thank you, my friend, for making a place for me and Bell to live at. It has been a pleasure knowing you. May you continue to live a long life. Zeus separated from him and started to dash away. Javier, wait. Eric called out towards the fleeing god, making his way towards the side of his house. He quickly untied his horse before giving the reins to Zeus. Take Sally with you. She's got some years on her, but she'll do good for the two of you. Zeus looked touched at the display of friendship. When he went to grab some valise to give, the chief quickly waved his hands at. Don't worry about, I'll make Hermes pay for her. He still owes me from the last time we played poker. The older man shared a laugh with Zeus, most likely the last one. Zeus straddled the horse in one go, looked back at the old man, before giving the horse a kick, and started to gallop away into the distance. Good luck to the both of you. May the gods above watch over your travels. Eric watched for as long as he could, before Zeus disappeared from his eyesight, feeling like there was nothing more he could do, he went back inside and finished his breakfast. 2 weeks later, Hermes was on cloud 9. He finally had a chance to have a bit of a vacation, his choice of destination, seeing his old friend, Zeus. Sure, getting to him took some time, but it was always worth it in the end. His companion for this little side quest of his, none other than his beautiful Vice-Captain Asfi Andromeda. While she was vehemently against him taking time away from his busy schedule, especially given the state of the world at the moment, he always had a way of making the trip seem necessary. Little did he know the shock he was about to experience. Upon seeing the village in the distance, Hermes squealed in excitement. It had been so long since he had a chance to talk with Zeus, he couldn't wait for it. Look at them, Asfi, truly happy people, not a care for the world in this tiny village. Their biggest worry being if the crops produced a bad harvest, not knowing the true worry that existed outside their bubble. Hermes and Asfi had settled on a hill overlooking the village. They didn't want to cause too much of a scene. Yes, Hermes, whatever you say, try to make it quick, we have a lot of work cut out for us. Back in Rio, it's not fair you shoved all of your work towards the others. Asfi was many things with her god, but at the moment, annoyed would be the best word to use. Okay, I'll be back before you know. Hermes gave Asfi a wink before beginning his descent into the village wearing a robe to hide himself. But as he entered it, he noticed a rather strange aura going around, almost as if someone had passed away. Pushing the thought aside from pleasant things, he made his way towards the village chief's house, aptly knocking a code signifying that it was him. He heard footsteps rushing towards the door before it was slammed open, revealing the chief huffing and puffing as if the world depended on him answering the door. Whoa, calm down, old-timer. Don't want you to keel over before I can win back the money I owe you. Hermes gave a laugh before stopping at the serious look he was getting. Lord Hermes, it's Zeus. Eric pulled out the letter that was left in his care, it being snatched the moment it came into view. Hermes set to work reading it once, twice, and being in a confused state, thrice. In the meantime, Eric had retrieved the key to the house that was left in his care, assuming that Hermes would be in care of it now. Hermes looked at the key for a second before shaking his head at it. No, not yet, I'll come back for the contents of the house at a later date. For now, when did they leave? Hermes needed as many answers as he could get. Should be 2 weeks now. Eric answered quickly. The letter told Hermes where the two of them were going, and doing some math, it would take almost 2 months to get there after everything is said and done. I have to leave, now. Hermes deduced that he wasn't going back to Rio, not a minute. Asfi's going to kill me. I better get going, no time like tomorrow as they say. Thank you, take care of the house until I return. Hermes thanked his old poker buddy, before grabbing his coin purse and giving it to Eric. For my debt, and for being a good friend to us. Eric was more than satisfied with the weight of the coin purse. It should easily cover the cost of getting a new horse, and help the village as winter had yet to fully set in. Hermes practically sprinted back towards where he left Asfi, where she had made a fire and was looking like she was going to make dinner. Once she saw how Hermes was coming into camp, that process stopped. Is everything okay, Hermes? Asfi asked worryingly. We're leaving now, come on. Hermes' answer was prompt, as he began to shove all his clothes that he had already laid out. Wait, what? We just got here. I literally just made this fire. We've been riding all day long. Asfi couldn't help but protest at the antics of her god. I know, I'm sorry, Asfi, but this is an emergency. We have to go now. We're already running behind them. We need to catch up before it's too late. Hermes had already mounted his horse and was looking at Asfi, who was still standing over her fire. Asfi couldn't help but let out a tiny scream before putting out the fire and repacking their supplies. Where are we even going, and who are we running behind? Asfi asked angrily before mounting her horse beside Hermes. First to the west coast. We need to grab a couple of people, to say the least, then make way north, grab another person, before heading back here and then heading to the far north. Hermes said all that in one breath, realizing halfway through that Asfi was not happy, given her scowl kept getting worse, before being replaced with a smile, which scared Hermes even more. Oh, is that all? I thought we might go to the far east while we were at it. I heard the weather Is nice this time of year. Esfi said calmly. Why would we do that? That's way out of our way. Hermes asked, tempting fate. This whole trip is out of our way. Esfi snapped. Hermes, you better ride. Faster than me, because so help me if I catch you. The scowl was back, with a vengeance. Hermes didn't need to be told twice, before setting off, full gallop, Esfi following close. Behind him. You didn't answer my second question. Who are we running behind? Esfi asked as she caught up to Hermes. The future of this world, Esfi, that's who. Hermes answered, before spurring his horse to ride faster into the night, leaving behind a confused Esfi, as she pondered who that could be. 1 month later, on the outskirts of a village, Zeus was busy updating Belle's status. Today had been rather successful, with Belle clearing out a whole monster nest by himself. As Zeus stared at the numbers, he had to be impressed with Belle's progress so far. Belle's only had a fauna for around 6 weeks, and has already made leaps in his status. No wonder he was able to level up so fast. That skill of his is basically cheating. If this is what is capable of outside the dungeon, gods know what he can do once he steps inside it. As Zeus finished updating Belle's status, he grabbed a piece of paper and transferred over the data, before placing the paper into a folder for future inspection. Still not going to let me see my status, Grandpa? Belle asked, annoyed to say the least at being kept in the dark for so long. Not even Hestia was this secretive about his status. All in good time, my boy, I promise. Besides, we should be celebrating. You cleared out your first monster nest, by yourself and at level 1 at that. Zeus said cheerfully, grabbing a bottle of wine and 2 glasses, before filling one and handing it over to Belle, who begrudgingly took it and began to pour himself one. Cheers! Zeus yelled out, drinking himself some of the sweet wine. Yeah, cheers. Belle didn't hide his lack of excitement, before drinking some of the wine, which upon its sweetness hitting his taste buds, caused Belle to shudder. Oh, don't be like that, unless you'd rather celebrate another way, maybe go back to that village. I saw how some of those pretty girls were looking at you. Zeus raised his eyebrows at Belle, eliciting the response he wanted to see. Grandpa, that's dirty, don't talk like that. Belle became a blushing mess, trying not to think about it. Well, don't be like that. Come on, Belle, you're around that age. You know, it's perfectly natural for a young man like yourself to want to explore all the exotics things the world has to offer, including the woman, whom I'm sure would be more than willing to throw themselves onto a bed and strip dash dot. Zeus couldn't finish the sentence as Belle had picked up a nearby pebble and threw it at him, causing Zeus to let out a boisterous laughter. I already said not to be talk like that, Grandpa, please. Belle was as red as a tomato. He still wasn't used to his grandpa's way of talking, which had only gotten worse as they traveled together. I'm just saying, my dear grandson, you have to admit the facts. You have the face of an angel, your eyes shine like rubies, your smile can brighten anyone's day, and you've hit a nice growth spurt and you're filling in nicely. You have quite literally a better body than some gods. Those abs look like they were chiseled by a master craftsman. Belle, don't get me started on your scars. Normally they would take away from someone, but yours. Man, oh, man, a woman's dream, my boy. You are the picture-perfect image of a warrior. Zeus finished his rant by drinking the rest of his wine, pouring himself another glass. I just don't see it, Gramps. I mean, I'm just being myself. Belle had to admit to some of the things Zeus was saying. He did indeed have a growth spurt, now standing at 172 centimeters, and since he's been hunting more wild game, his intake of protein had gone up considerably, so he was putting on more muscle. Not to mention that given his lifestyle, and now being level 1 again, he was having to put more effort into fighting monsters, stimulating muscle growth. I wouldn't lie to you, Belle, and I see it every time we go to another village. All the single girls, and even some of the not single ones, all have their eyes on you, taking you in, wondering what's lying beneath those clothes. I mean, some of them really want to take you in, if you catch my meaning. Zeus let out a whistle into the night, before falling backwards, trying to dodge the next pebble Belle threw at him. You dirty old man, you're going to say the wrong thing one of these days and someone's gonna kick your ass. Belle was exhausted at this point. He had a long day clearing the monster nest, and now he had to deal his perverted god. That might happen sooner than you think, Belle. Besides dash dot. Zeus made a motion with his fingers for Belle to scoot in closer, which poor Belle did, before speaking in a hushed voice. "Some girls like our stuff." Zeus gave Belle a wink, before Belle immediately stood up and began walking away. "I'm going to bed, Zeus. Good night." Belle began to lay in his sleeping bag, trying not to think of how something could go up there. "I swear, that old man is going to make my white hair turn gray somehow." "Night, Belle, CYA in the morning." Zeus finished his glass of wine before getting comfortable near the fire, content with himself for getting a rise out of Belle. "Good night, Grandpa. Let's get started early again. We still have a ways to go." It didn't take long for Belle to drift to sleep, but for Zeus, sleep would have to wait, as it did every night. Since they began their journey, he didn't need to wait too long before it began. It started with whispers, soon evolving to Belle tossing and turning his sleep. Then the screams started. Belle was having a nightmare, as he did every night, and Zeus couldn't do anything but just listen. As Belle begged and whimpered for it to stop, Zeus knew what he spoke of, what creature Belle was begging to, what he wanted to stop. "That damned dragon, it wasn't just satisfied at taking my sons from me, now it plagues the dreams of my grandson." Zeus saw it. He saw everything that Belle saw. He watched Rio burn and the tower fall. He bore witness to the final battle that took place, and how they lost. Dozens of adventurers went on to face the dragon in battle, most of them first class, but they lacked the power, and more importantly, the numbers. Me and Hera sent the full might of our familiars at the dragon, rather than the dozens Belle had. We had hundreds, but it was all for nothing. Against that monster, nothing short of divine intervention will help. Zeus was pondering his options. There was one thing he could do to help Belle, not directly of course, but a nudge in the right direction, a possible ally that lies buried in history. Soon the screams started to calm down, the murmurs came to an end, and Belle finally found some semblance of peace. Zeus decided to put his new plan on hold for the time being, before getting some sleep as well. A week later, Belle and Zeus found themselves in another village late into the evening, this one even smaller than the last one, a good portion of the houses left abandoned, or burned down to the ground. They would soon learn from the village leader, a younger woman in her 20s, that a bandit camp had settled down nearby, exhorting the village for whatever food they had stored for winter. When the town refused and even tried to repel the bandits, it was met with steel and fire, with the bandits now taking some of the villagers as slaves and bargaining chips. The town had secretly sent someone to a guild building that was a few kilometers away, but that was weeks ago, and they feared the worst. Belle didn't hesitate to offer aid to the now starving village. Dropping Zeus off in the woods nearby, he set to work immediately, preparing himself to cross blades with his fellow man. It didn't take long for Belle to find the camp. It was some distance out of the village, but nothing he couldn't cross within a few minutes given his blessing. Night had already descended on the encampment, with Belle watching as some of the men began gathering around campfires, drinking and laughing. He narrowed his vision as he saw some of the villagers being held in pens that they could barely fit in, mostly consisting of women and children. Belle decided to use the night to his advantage, recalling the time Mikoto had attempted to teach him ninjutsu, mostly because Belle had heard rather cool stories about ninjas in the Far East. Attempted was the apt word, because both of them were terrible at it. It didn't suit either one's fighting style or code of honor. Well, Mikoto was great at it. I just got tossed around a lot. But Belle didn't have a choice but to use it. He was heavily outnumbered, and there were people's lives at stake. Belle took a few minutes to study the bandits' habits of changing guards, while using the shadows and bushes to hide his advancement. Upon seeing his chance, he snatched one of them, pulling them into the bushes with him, quickly putting the man in a rear choke hold, before releasing his grip once the man went limp. Belle did this time and again, slowly, becoming more and more aggressive as the numbers started to look more favorable to him. It didn't take long before Belle found himself in front of the pens, staring at the state the villagers were in. Belle grit his teeth so hard he thought they would crack. The people looked starved to death, with their cheeks being hollowed and their ribs showing. The children had whatever random clothes on, the woman clearly giving them whatever clothes they could spare, while keeping what they needed to keep their dignity. When they saw Belle approaching, the woman pulled their children in close, trying to protect them from whatever threat the mysterious man posed. Sure, it's okay, I'm here to save you. The village sent me. I'm an adventurer. Bell spoke in a hushed tone. He wanted to draw the least amount of attention. Upon hearing they were being saved, some of the women began crying, thankful that their prayers had been answered. Before Bell could release them, he heard footsteps come rushing in behind him. There he is, the little punk that knocked out our boys. A much older man was the one who spoke. Bell figured he was the leader. Bell counted 14 men, all armed with swords, daggers, axes, and all sorts of weapons that they most likely plundered from nearby villages. Well, shitfire, looks like we have a hero in our midst, boys. The leader shared a laugh. Amongst him men. I'm gonna tell you what we're going to do. We're going to lop you. Head off, then send it back to that village. The leader ran a finger over the edge of his blade. Bell was positive he could take them on, but he wasn't sure they weren't willing to fight. Dirty, and one look at the woman and children in cages reinforced that thought. He needed to end this in one fell swoop. Bell picked up his right hand. Oh, you're going to bed, ain't ya? I love it when they beg. It really tickles me funny. The leader smirked at Bell, not knowing his soon-to-be fate. Firebolt. Back at the outskirts of the village, Zeus was relaxing around his campfire, drinking tea while eating an apple, looking at the collage of Bell's status sheets, studying his rate of growth. Before he heard the explosion in the distance, it didn't take a genius to know Bell used his magic. Well, I guess they fucked up, was all Zeus said before resuming his studying. A couple of hours later, as the sun was breaking into the sky, whoever was left in the village were already awake. Having been awoken earlier by the explosion, they were left muttering, with each of what could have been the cause. Soon, though, someone saw in the distance a young man with white hair, being followed by a line of men that looked burnt and roughed up, tied together in rope. It was who was walking beside them that made the village cheer and run towards the group. All the women and children that were taken, seeing their loved ones, took off to reunite with them. Tears and joy were had throughout the people. Bell handed over the reins to a few of the men left in the village before setting out to reunite with Zeus. Bell found him making himself breakfast. The smell was alluring for Bell. He hadn't eaten for almost 12 hours at this point. But Bell didn't care for food. The moment Zeus saw him, he stood up and was about to ask how everything went. But before he could, Bell had already slammed into him, crying and moaning. Zeus was confused at first, but slowly embraced his grandson, whispering sweet lies into his ears as Bell cried and cried, before finally collapsing from exhaustion. Zeus didn't know what happened but decided to just finish making breakfast and wait for Bell to come to. It was already the afternoon when Bell finally started to stir from his sleep, waking up to find Zeus staring at him. They met eyes for a second before Bell had seen a plate of food had already been set out for him. Bell didn't care if the eggs and bacon were cold. He devoured them all the same. After eating and quenching his thirst, the two sat in silence, not knowing how to start the conversation. Zeus dash dot. Bell was the one who broke the ice. I know, Bell. I updated your status while you slept. I saw what happened. I just wanted to tell you that what you did was brave. You went to save those people, not knowing how many foes you would be facing, but you went all the same, and you saved them. Zeus was proud of Bell for being a hero. What's going to happen those men, Grandpa? Will they take them to a prison dash dot? They are going to hang them, Bell. Zeus interrupted, causing Bell to shoot straight up and looked ready to run to the village. Sit down, Bell. But Grandpa dash dot. I said sit. Zeus allowed a bit of his divinity to leak out, but it gave the intended result. Bell immediately sat down. You grew up in a place of peace, Bell, alongside me, shielding you from the horrors of what men can do to their fellow man. But we are out here now. We left the walls of our village, abandoning our safe refuge. War grips Orario as we speak. Thus Orario cannot just send out adventures to these villages that don't even exist on a map. Winter is starting to arrive, and with it, starvation will push people to do terrible things in the hope of survival. Before, these outskirt villages could rely on Orario sending some form of relief in the dead of winter, if they could get to a guild building, but not this year, Bell. This year, these villages are on their own. And what happens to this village of all things? They get attacked by scum. They take their food, take their women and children as slaves, threatening to harm them if their demands aren't met, and think, Belle, you were here to save them. What if you weren't? If it happened in this timeline, think about yours, except in yours, there was no hero. Zeus finished his statement, giving Belle time to ponder his words. Those men will hang Belle, because to this village, that is justice. Belle's eyes went wide. When Zeus said the word justice, it was a word that Ryu had said often. What is justice? Belle couldn't help but repeat that sentence. He thought he knew what justice was, but after last night, he didn't know. You've never killed a man before, Belle, and I'm happy you haven't. It'll change someone like you. Zeus had moved over next to Belle, placing a hand on Belle's shoulder. The village chief wants to talk you. She wants to thank you for saving her people. She already sent some of her men to pick up all the supplies the bandits stole. But if I were you, I'd take whatever we have and give them to her. You can always hunt for more meat. Zeus said as he gave Belle a tap on the shoulder before walking away, presumably to begin lunch, leaving Belle to think about the conversation. Does this settle things, Belle? Zeus asked as he threw a nice deer tenderloin on the cast iron pan. I have to accept it. That's their justice. Belle replied. Good, good, because they already hung them. Zeus's reply was cold and ruthless. What? Belle was confused as to when they did it. Yep, the moment you got back to the village, they found the biggest tree, started hanging them one by one. Of course, they begged, pleaded for mercy, tried to say that they were driven to hunger and lost themselves. They hung, all the same. Zeus sat there, staring at the meat cooking. You still going to the village? Zeus asked, not knowing if Belle would be okay to see the hanging bodies. Yeah, I'll get it taken care of. Belle was still left questioning a lot of things, but decided, for the time being, to stay busy. He went over to Sally, giving her an apple and a few taps on the side. He reached into their bags and started to dig out all the jerky and whatever meat he had from the deer he hunted 2 days ago. With the cold starting to set in, the meat hadn't gone bad yet. Maybe I'll go hunting for a couple of hours, bag some more meat for the village. Content with the thought, Belle grabbed his bow and some arrows before telling Zeus his plan, who wholeheartedly supported it. Time came and went, and soon Belle was walking through the village, carrying 2 bucks on his left shoulder, while dragging 3 hogs with his right hand, easily at least 400 pounds of meat. Many of the villagers had come out to greet him and give their thanks for rescuing them, and he saw some of the kids running around yelling firebolt towards each other, laughing. Before he would have smiled at it, like he used to when he saw the kids at the orphanage doing it, but now it brought a shudder to him as he realized these kids saw him using it on other people. It wasn't long before Belle arrived at the village leader's house, giving a polite knock. The door soon opened, revealing the chief. She was a pretty woman, with auburn hair and cool blue eyes. She was wearing a white tunic with maroon leggings. Her eyes went wide, seeing Belle, before a smile crossed her lips. I hope I'm not intruding. My God had told me that you wished to speak with me, but he also told me that you weren't able to get as much food back from the bandits, so I went out and got more meat to help the village over the winter. Belle flashed a smile towards her, before dumping all the animals outside her house. Oh my, how very thoughtful of you. I'll get some of my men to start dressing the animals and get to preserving the meat. You have no idea how far this will help us. She gave a quick wave of her hand towards an older man and pointed towards the animals. He gave a nod of understanding and soon went about to gather more men to start the work. She stepped out of the way, making room for Belle. Would you, perhaps, like to come in and we may discuss a reward for your work? She gave Belle a warm smile, which Belle, not wanting to be rude, quickly accepted the offer and stepped inside her home. I don't really need a reward, nor do I want one. I was only doing what was right, Belle said, noticing how warm it was inside. He and Zeus have been sleeping outdoors for more than a month now. He didn't realize how much he would miss having 4 walls and a roof around him. Nonsense, you're this village's hero. You deserve something at the least, she said, offering Belle a seat at her table, which he took. We might not be the wealthiest village, but we can scrounge up something for you, I'm sure of it. She took a seat opposite Belle. I must insist, I don't want a reward. The weather will only get harsher from here. You will need everything you have if the village is to last until spring. Belle's reply was firm. He wasn't moving from his stance, which caused the older woman to give a pout. Well, if you insist, At least let me reward you. She replied, crossing her arms underneath her chest, causing her breast to become more prominent. Belle tried not to stare. Belle was having a bit of a hard time trying to figure out what exactly this reward meant. I have a roast cooking over the fire in the pot, with some vegetables that I saved during summer. It would be nice if you came over for dinner. She replied immediately, making a very alarmed Belle give a sign of relief. I will have to politely decline. Me and my God need to set out already. We have much to do before we get to our destination. Belle stood up and went for the door. Yes, of course. Thank you for everything. It truly is a blessing. She gave Belle a sad smile before letting him out and closing the door behind him. Belle walked back to camp. Seeing Zeus sitting at the campfire, he joined him. They made small talk between each other, up until Belle brought up the chief's offer for dinner and his refusal, which made Zeus give his grandson a very confused look. What did you just say? That the leader offered to have dinner me. She said she was making a roast, and I have to admit, it smelt great. And you told her no? Zeus sat up. Well, yes, we have to get on the road. Gramps dashed. Fuck the road, go have dinner with her. Zeus was now standing, looking down at Belle. Belle was taken aback at Zeus's words, standing up himself. Zeus, we don't have time for little distractions. We have to keep moving forward. Belle, my boy, where did I go wrong with you? Belle's feelings actually got hurt at the comment. A pretty woman, who doesn't have much to begin with, cooked dinner for you, and you're going to say no? Zeus pointed his index finger at Belle. She didn't cook dinner for me, Grandpa. She was just coincidentally making dinner when I knocked on her door. Belle was going to stand his ground on this. You dense little shit dash. Zeus snatched one of Belle's ears, causing him to yelp in pain. Hey, woman just doesn't make that sort of dinner out of the blue. That takes hours of preparation. Now you go back there, and you accept that invitation. Zeus let go of Belle's ear, which Belle began to nurse. Oh, Grandpa, I just don't see what the big deal is. The deal is, Belle, is that people see you as their hero. Zeus was going full grandparent mode. We've spent weeks on the road, village after village, quest after quest. We've helped people with getting nothing in return sometimes. How long do you think that monster nest was a problem? It was massive, well over 100 goblins and kobolds. That just doesn't happen overnight, Belle. How long do you think those people lived in fear, hoping that today wasn't the day that monster nest decided to rampage through the village, killing and devouring anyone that got caught? Then came you, the white-haired hero, and you took care of that nest in one day. Some of these people have never seen an adventurer before, Belle, much less a god, and yet we came in their time of need and saved them. All I'm saying, my dear grandson, is enjoy yourself while you still can, because once we get to Dragon Valley, it's all about survival. Belle and Zeus looked at each other for a few seconds, before Belle hung his head low, ashamed for how he was acting. Zeus was right. Belle was still a hero, even after everything that happened to him. Belle was still himself. Okay. I'll go have dinner with her. We can take off come first light. Belle finally relented, throwing his arms up in the air, mock surrendering. Atta boy, here, take this, and come back and tell me all about. Zeus tossed Belle a nice wine bottle, which still confused him on where the hell Zeus keeps them all. With a shake of his head, Belle took off back into the village, seeing some of the men already almost done butchering the animals that he dropped off earlier. He stood in front of the chief's house, giving a light knock this time. Coming. He heard the leader yell out, and not even a minute later she opened the door, letting out a surprised whelp at seeing Belle. She was covered in sweat and what appeared to be a bit of beef stock on her shirt. I wasn't expecting you. I would have gotten more prepared. I assume you changed your mind, she asked, giving Belle a shy smile. Yeah, I'm terribly sorry. My god was pretty eccentric about me coming and having dinner with you. I brought this. Belle handed over the wine bottle, which she took gladly. Oh my, how nice of him. Come, it just got done. Please sit. She went to work on opening the bottle, pouring herself and Belle in glass, before setting the pot roast in between them. Belle helped her set the table, and after a minute or so both were eating and chatting away. After some time, with bellies full and the wine bottle a good ways empty, the two begin talking in earnest. Belle learned her name is Tomira. You're pretty young for being a chief for a village. My old chief was a pretty elderly man. Belle gave a smile. The wine was having a nice effect on him. My father was the chief before me. He passed away recently, and no one really knew what to do, so I stepped up and people just followed. Tomira answered sadly. I'm sorry for your loss. That must have been a pretty stressful time for you. Belle felt sadness. For her, he knew what loss felt like. Well, compared to what just happened, it wasn't all too bad, why I know. She couldn't help but shrug at the fact. Yeah, I guess you're not wrong. I'm really sorry. I wish I had gotten here sooner. I think everyone does, to be honest, but it's not your fault. Ain't nobody going to blame you. It's just the way the world is right now. I wish it was a better place. I understand that wish perfectly fine. In truth, that's why I'm heading further north, to Dragon Valley. Dragon Valley? Why would you want to go somewhere so hazardous? Tomira slapped a hand over her mouth, shocked. The monsters are strong. It'll help me grow as an adventure. Rio is a hot spot, right? Wouldn't do me any good to head that way. Belle couldn't help but scratch his head. He wished he could go, but knew that would only cause problems. Well, at least it isn't far from here. There's one more village up north, about a 2-week trip. Then Dragon Valley isn't more than 2 weeks from there. So, if you ever wanted to come back south to see me, I wouldn't mind. Tomira said with a smile and a blush, looking in Belle's eyes. Belle was having a full-blown internal panic attack. He recalled him and Zeus' previous discussion, and realized that Tomira was indeed looking at him like that. Belle quickly stood up and excused himself before things got more heated. The dinner was truly fantastic. Thank you, being a great host. Belle was making a beeline straight to the door. Tomira followed after him, and they stood in the doorway together. You sure you don't want dessert, Tilda? I promise, it'll be sweet. Tomira put her hand on Belle's chest, feeling the warmth he was emanating. Internal screaming asterisk. Belle was having a meltdown. He couldn't speak in a cohesive sentence. But, at the last moment, he saw golden hair in his vision, and he calmly expressed himself. I'm terribly sorry, but there is someone that I must see before I do anything else. Tomira had a moment of pause before smiling and opening the door for Belle. Well, I hope whoever she is, that she knows she got a real good catch. Tomira gave Belle a sad smile before closing the door. Belle started walking back to the camp, grateful that it was nighttime, so that nobody saw the tears flowing down his face. When he finally got back to camp, Zeus looked like he was staring at a ghost. What are you doing here? What kind of question is that, Grandpa? This is where we're camping. No shit, I know that. Why aren't you with that pretty woman? You were supposed to stay the night, Belle. Grandpa, I'm not doing that. Besides, what does it matter to you anyhow? Well, you're basically almost a grown-ass man. I want some great-grandchildren already. Belle stared at Zeus for a minute, giving him a deadpanned look. Belle was done. Good night, Grandpa. Get some sleep. We're leaving at the crack of dawn. Belle went to lay down and prayed for the strength not to strangle his god. Good night, Belle. Come dawn, as Belle and Zeus were heading out, Belle gave one last look back towards the village. That's when he saw them, hanging on a tree, swaying in the wind. For a moment, just a tiny fraction of a second, Belle felt just the tiniest smidge of joy at seeing justice being carried out. 2 weeks later, winter was in full bloom, and the further north Belle and Zeus went, the harsher it became. Belle knew that they were coming onto the last village, any day now. Belle felt bad for Sally. Poor girl had no shelter, while him and Zeus would build barely passable shelters for the night. Finally, one morning while they were traversing through snow to up to their knees, did Belle see smoke. Thank gods, we're almost there. A warm drink with some soup would do us well, a kiddo. Zeus was overjoyed at seeing some form of civilization, but upon looking at Belle, he got worried. What's wrong, Belle? There's too much smoke. Something's not right. Belle began trudging through the snow more strongly, trying to get to the top of the hill they were on. Zeus, riding on top of Sally, followed behind him. Upon reaching the top did they see the problem. An infant dragon was terrorizing the village below. Belle saw people fleeing for their lives, but he also saw a group of people riding atop horses shooting arrows at the dragon. Elves, Zeus pointed out, must have come from the nearby forest. We should try to help. Belle. Upon seeing Belle not moving, Zeus looked at him, becoming petrified at what he saw. Belle. Belle didn't know what overcame him. But in that instance, seeing the dragon fighting against people, seeing the smoldering remains of the tiny village, the burnt corpses, something inside him just snapped. His breathing quickened, his eyes went wide, adrenaline started surging. Through his veins, Bell was filled with only one emotion: rage. Bell blew past Zeus, crossing the distance in seconds, drawing his sword, ready to draw blood and turn this monster to ash. Bell! Zeus yelled out, but for nothing. Bell rushed past the elves on horseback. They shouted something at him, but he didn't care. He was tunneled vision, caring only for the kill. The infant dragon saw his new prey approaching fast and tried to breath fire at him, but it didn't know this prey had fire of his own. Firebolt! Bell shouted out his magic, shooting it out of his left hand. It didn't do any significant damage to the dragon, but it did well to distract an adventurer who knows magic all the way out here. One of the elves yelled out. He had green hair, with a white robe inlaid with gold. He turned around at the direction the young human had come from, only to see in the distance a man straddled on a horse. Must be his god. The elf tried to make out more details, but he was concealed too heavily. Realizing he wasn't going to get anywhere, he focused on the battle happening before him. Bell had quickly dashed forward, seizing upon the dragon's momentary loss of sight, gripping his longsword with both swords. He easily cut through the dragon's left front leg's back ankle, causing the dragon to let out a roar before collapsing onto his front cavity upon its sudden loss of balance. It tried to tail sweep the white rabbit, but to its surprise it latched onto it instead, so the dragon flicked his tail upwards, happy when its prey flung up into the sky, which is what Bell was hoping for. As he flew into the sky, he recalled how he began experimenting with Firebolt upon reaching level 5, and he learned a rather fascinating thing from his experiments. Firebolt doesn't come out of his hand exactly, but rather always a number of centimeters from it. With a few choice scenarios, he learned how to really maximize this fact. As Bell came to a stop in the air, he aimed his sword right at the dragon's neck. Firebolt! And much to the shock of everyone present, the spell went off at his feet, propelling himself downwards at a much faster rate than when he went up. The dragon thought it had time to savor his victory, but seeing how his prey was coming in way too fast, it tried to move out of the way, but couldn't because of its previous injury. Bell slammed into the dragon hard, causing its whole body to recoil at the impact. The sword went clean through the dragon's neck, so Bell let his body fall to the right and left gravity to deal its work, easily cutting the dragon's neck in half. But Bell wasn't so easily satisfied. He latched on to the dragon's remaining connection to its body and raised his sword high. 1, 2, 3. 3 cleaves is what it took to fully decapitate the dragon, spraying Bell and the surrounding snow in its red blood. Bell stood there, soaked in blood, staring down at the dragon's corpse. Still filled with anger, he gripped his sword again, waiting to begin hacking away towards the monster's crystal, but the dragon turned to ash, leaving nothing behind. Bell heard some arrows being knocked, turning towards the elves. He noticed there was around a dozen of them, all of them aiming at him. He put his left hand up, as he put his sword in the ground, before pulling out his canteen with his right hand and began washing the blood out his hair and face. A human with white hair, and eyes like rubies. I've heard of this one. The elf with green hair said aloud, signaling the other elves to lower their bows. Green hair. You must be related to Her Majesty, Reveria I Jo's Alf. Bell gave a courtesy bow, which to the elves lacked tact, but it was welcomed, nevertheless. Oh, you know Her Majesty. The elf raised an eyebrow at Bell. I know she is a great mage. Her magic is well known to be among the strongest that any mortal can hope to cast. Bell knew he was terrible at lying, so he had to tell the truth, just not the truth the elf was seeking. Flattery, how becoming of you. The elf seemed pleased with the compliment paid towards his princess. Bell noticed the other elves seemed to let their guard down and began talking amongst themselves. That was when he noticed one in particular, one he knows. Alicia Forestlight. Bell's eyes went wide for a moment, before collecting himself. Unfortunately for him, she grew curious and rode her horse near him. For a minute they just stared at each other, before she dismounted her horse and took a step towards him. We have heard of your exploits in my home forest of Fanake, Bell Cranel. You've been a great help to the villages of the north. while my brethren might not share in my gratitude as much as I do, I must give my thanks for helping us slay the dragon. In truth, more and more attacks are happening more frequently. It is getting harder to help. Alicia gave a sad smile. She wanted to help as much as she could, but their numbers were starting to get stretched thin, lest a monster or worse attack her home. It was for selfish reasons why I helped. My actions this morning were rather out of character. Normally I would be more level-headed, but I recently had a rather bad experience with a dragon, and I guess it left more of a mark than I thought. Bell gave a strained smile, hoping to mask his discomfort. I understand, but I must ask. Alicia began swaying side to side, twiddling her fingers. Is your god perhaps looking to add more adventures? I'm a skilled marksman and can wield a sword well enough. Alicia tried to give a happy smile. Tried, which caused Bell to laugh, a happy laugh that filled the cool morning air. I'm afraid not. My god is rather finicky when it comes to recruiting members. But I would say in time, you should go to Rio and look for Loki Familia. She's an eccentric goddess. But she has a good eye for potential talent, and I believe you would do well there. Bell inched a little closer, but not touching distance. That's the Familia Lady Riveria is in by the way. When Bell inched back to a more comfortable distance, he could see the stars in Alicia's eyes. That sounds wonderful. Thank you for the advice. I will make haste to Rio. No. Bell's voice was firm, which took Alicia back. Rio is not safe right now. There are forces afoot that even I am powerless against. Be patient. Soon the storm will pass, and Rio will be safe again. I know it. Bell gave her a smile. While Alicia was momentarily upset at his voice being raised at her, she was quite happy to know it came from a place of care, rather than him trying to command her. Alicia, we're leaving. Come along. We need to head home. Yes, father. Alicia yelled back, mounting her horse. Thank you. May we meet again on warmer days. Alicia gave Bell a smile, which he returned, before taking off with the rest of her group. Soon after, Zeus came down the help, looking at the shape of the village. Some people that had fled were making their way back, taking in the losses they suffered. They thanked Bell for his help in saving their village. Luckily, the dragon hadn't burnt down their food storage. He helped them put out the remainder fires, along with helping them dig the graves needed to bury the bodies of their loved ones that didn't make it out of the dragon's wrath. Feeling rather guilty about it, Bell was happy that one of the people that survived was the blacksmith. He placed an order for nails and hinges so that he and Zeus may start on building a home further north. What's a youngin like you heading all the way up to Dragon Valley for? The dwarf smith asked Bell. Bell smiled happily. His journey was about to be at an end, just 2 more weeks and then it's open season. To hunt. That's what he said. Zard was asking the same dwarf, after a longer journey of his own, why in all the gods in Tenkai was Bell heading to Dragon Valley for? Oh yes, sir, that's what he said. He placed an order of nails and hinges, which I gave him free of charge. What with him slaying that dragon that burned down old Louis' house and all 2 weeks ago. Least I could do if YA asked me. He took em and left with some bloke wearing so many coverings he'd make a nun jealous. The dwarf let out a hearty laugh as he continued to hammer away an order that was placed some time ago. Thank you, much appreciated. Zard walked back outside, staring at the odd assortment of people that he was traveling with. First and foremost, Althea, the boy's only blood relative, followed by the weasel, better known as Hermes, along with his little bird Asphi. Lastly, and regretfully, the worst travel partner Zard has ever had to travel with, her royal pain in the ass, the goddess Hera herself. Hera was beautiful, no doubt. She had long flowing aubergine hair, with cyan blue eyes that could strike down the hearts of lesser men. She was currently wearing her traditional purple pastel dress, with that striking V cut down the middle, exposing much of her breast. Zard would have asked if she wanted something warmer to wear, but he knew better. Her cold heart made her immune to the freezing temperatures they were facing. Thus, he soldiered onwards. When the group saw him heading towards them, they had a look of utter dissatisfaction painted on their faces. Let me guess, they're not here either. Hera snapped at him. I don't even fucking know who they are, this fucking twat waffle dash. Hera pointed at Hermes, who threw his arms up in surrender. Broke into my house, told me there was a planetary emergency, and it needed my immediate attention, dragged me across this shithole back county, and we still haven't found them. Hera was pissed beyond words. Of course you would believe that you're important enough to actually be useful in case the world was ending. Please, you're nothing but a washed-up goddess. Alfea snapped back at her useless goddess. Oh, that's rich coming from you. I knew I should have just taken your sister in. She was so sweet and nice. Bless her soul. Now I'm just left with you out of all my daughters. Hera spat back. Enough. Zod had to raise his voice. He looked at Alfea, knowing this would upset her the most. They went further north, they are settling in Dragon Valley, and prepared himself for the rather immediate aftermath. But to his surprise, there was none. Alfea breathed a sigh of relief and looked right in Zod's eyes. I wasn't sure before, but now I am. As soon as I see Zeus, I'm sending him back to Tenkai. On the spot. Zeus. We're fucking out here in the boonies looking for Zeus. Hermes, you little rat. Bastard, get over here. Hera lunged at Hermes before he could scamper away and locked her hands around his throat. Hera let out a scream of bloody murder. Poor little bird was trying to pry them apart. Goddess Hera. Please, not now, I still need him. Asfi was trying to reason with the bloodthirsty goddess, without much luck. Thankfully Alfea had seen enough. She got up, easily pulled them apart, before throwing Hera back into her seat in the carriage rather roughly. Sit, and I don't want to hear another peep out of you for the rest of the day. It's the least you can do for the rest of us. As for you, Alfea stared daggers at Hermes. If I find out that you knew where Zeus was going, I'll turn you into a eunuch, so help me. Hermes let out an audible gulp, fanning himself. Now come along, Zod. I'm not getting any younger just standing here. Zod gave a shrug before mounting the carriage and giving the horses the signal to push onwards. After a while of riding in silence, a much-needed conversation finally happened. What do you think this all means, Alfea? I mean, Zeus was always a spontaneous god, but never like this. Zod looked back towards the rest of group, making sure no one was within earshot, especially with a small child, to go this far north, much less to Dragon Valley. It's not like him at all. I would like to agree, Zod, I really do, but we've both heard the rumors, as much as they bring me pain. Zod gave a nod, knowing what she meant. A white-haired hero, going around killing monsters and fighting slavers. He killed a dragon. That's what attacked the village and burned down those houses. Alfea's eyes went wide at that, before gripping a part of the carriage so hard it cracked under the pressure. Then there's no denying it now, Zod. Zeus did as we feared. He gave him a Falna. It was a thought that the two had juggled, especially as they heard more and more accomplishments that her nephew had done for the villages around here. But why? I mean, Zeus was devastated after what happened. I was sure he would never give another blessing again. So why now, and why with him? Zod had many questions for Zeus when they finally caught up to the two. I don't know, Zod. There's too many unknowns, like how all the people describe him as a young man who's especially popular with the women. That's impossible, but yet, it's what multiple people have said. At this point, I just want this to be done with. I'm tired, Zod. I spend all day and night thinking about him, wondering if he's okay, wondering if I'm doing the right thing coming to see him after all this time. Alfea had few regrets in life, but she didn't want this to be one of them, not if her nephew was in danger. Zod put an arm around Alfea, pulling her in close, trying to comfort his friend. I know, it's just 2 more weeks, and then we'll see him, and I'm sure all of our worries will be gone. Are you at least excited? I mean, you've never met before. I'm sure he'll be happy to see you. Zod gave Alfea a warm smile. I'm scared, but a good kind. I hope I don't disappoint him, and that he's not loud. I couldn't stand a crybaby, but I have my doubts is that, given that he's already killing monster. Alfea had the slightest hint of a smile. Yeah, no kidding, maybe I can train him and whatnot. This could be a new chapter for us. Alfea, we should try to embrace it. I think you're right. This could be a new life for us. Alfea looked up into the sky, wondering if her sister was looking down at her. I promise, sister, I'll make sure Belle is okay, no matter what. Thus, the group moved along, full of questions, not knowing the chaos that was soon to come. Chapter end notes. You thought Belle and Alfea were going to meet in this chapter. But it was me, the author, who blocked it. In all seriousness, I had thought that Belle and Alfia were going to meet in this chapter. But like I got to 7k words, and thought, any second now I'll get to the meeting, then 8k. Words came, and then 9k, and I thought yeah I'm just going to write a separate chapter. For the meeting. Which works out perfectly honestly, they meet in chapter 3, which 3 is. Like the coolest number. We have trilogy, trifecta, fucking pie, not the food, the number. This chapter was purely slice of life, other than the lore at the end of the chapter. Which, there will be times, where I write a chapter that is solely slice of life, just Belle and the gang hanging out and stuff. I hope that's okay. Obviously there will be chapters with massive lore implications and stuff, but I think everywhere wants it's nice to have a short chapter, still a few thousand words, but just slice of life. I think that'll be nice. Oh, by the way, Hera's design was based off of Hera from Blood of Zeus, a banger show from Netflix, still hoping out for season 2. Anyway, hope you enjoyed chapter 2. Chapter 3 is already planned out. Just got to start typing it up. Till next time. The long-awaited reunion and an unwanted guest. Chapter notes. I know. I made all of you wait 2 weeks for an update, so you get a chapter that is worth it. This chapter is 16k words, almost longer than the first 2 chapters put together. What does that mean? It means that we are officially done with the prologue of the story. I am extremely happy with the way this story has taken hold in the fanbase. With all the kudos and bookmarks, thank you all who have left comments, and please if you ever feel like asking a question or have a concern, don't be afraid to comment. I always endeavor to answer my comments. This chapter is pretty straightforward all in all, but let's address a couple of things. 1. I don't personally like the magic system in Danmachi being limited to only 3 spells, unless you have a skill, and even then you might not have 3 spell slots when you gain a Falna, like with Belle who when he got a Falna only had 1 spell slot, which, when he read the grimoire, used his only spell slot. So I did make a change, where Belle just gained in spell slot and that is Firebolt, and he kept his original spell slot. 2. Time skips. I have to cover 7 years worth of history in this story. I will not be writing a day-to-day thing for 7 years. There will be times where I will time skip months, and maybe even years, but I will always hit major plot lines in the history of Danmachi. I believe that's it for the opening of the chapter. I hope all of you enjoy as much as I enjoyed writing it. See the end of the chapter for more notes. For 2 months, a rather odd assortment of characters traveled across the continent, in search of 2 people, a god and a child. Zard Gluttony, former executive of the once mighty Zeus. Familia, slayer of the king of the land, Behemoth. Alpheus Silence, former executive of the equally mighty Hera Familia, executioner of the overlord of the seas, Leviathan. The last 2, remnants of a dynasty that lasted nearly 1,000 years, and the most powerful adventures alive at the moment. Following the 2 legendary adventures were the latter's respective goddess, Hera, former queen of Ororio, and the goddess who had the highest leveled adventure to ever live, a single level 9, the Empress. Behind her, a much less impressive god, Hermes, and his vice-captain, Asfi, who even though was level 3, and was strong, compared to most adventures alive, was considered nothing more than a glorified supporter. By her 2 elder adventures. It was a stark reminder for the 2 adventures at how Ororio had truly fallen from grace. 4. The 2 of them remembered how it was being in Zeus and Hera Familias at their prime. Levels 1 through 4, you were considered a trainee and a supporter, focusing solely on learning dungeon exploration and fighting, and carrying supplies for expeditions. You weren't considered an adventurer until you hit level 5 and became a first-class adventurer. Only then were you allowed freedom to do as you pleased, since at that point you could join the Familia's front lines as they traversed the deep flaws. Few exceptions were made to this rule, such as individuals who possessed unique skills or magic that the Familias wanted to develop and grow. Zard and Alfia were such exceptions. Little did they know that the child they are so desperately looking for is an exception as well. But finally, after 2 long months, their journey appeared to be coming to an end, as they saw the plumes of smoke that was more than likely coming from the house they were looking for. Zard and Alfia shared a look between each other, before nodding and deciding that whatever comes next, they'll do it together. It didn't take long before the house came in sight. It was a simple log cabin, nothing too big, easily sizable enough to fit some rooms in it, with a chimney that the smoke was coming from. Not a second later did they see an elderly man, laying out mortar and brick on the left side of the house, providing more insulation to help keep the cold out. Zod pulled on the reins of the horses, stopping the carriage a few meters from the entrance of the house, causing the older man to give a sigh, revealing his breath in the cold morning air, laying down one more brick before he stood up to his full height and turned towards the group. Zeus. Zod couldn't help but mutter his god's name, a man he hadn't seen in almost 7 years. Zod, my beloved son. Zeus was going to utter more, but upon seeing Zeus, Althea jumped out of the carriage and stormed towards the elder god. Althea, wait. Zod tried to stop what was going to happen, but didn't exactly put too much effort in it, thinking his god deserved some punishment. Althea, I can expel. Before Zeus could finish his sentence, Althea had already raised her right hand. Smack. Althea slapped Zeus across his cheek, sending the god to the ground, where he held his left cheek in pain. You dare, Zeus? Althea let out a scream. Normally she carried herself quite well, and hated loud noises the most, but in this moment, she didn't care. Nothing mattered to her other than, Bel, I know what you've done, you bastard of a god. You gave him a Falna, pit him against monsters and worse. And you have the gall to even look me in the eyes and try to give an explanation. Althea grabbed Zeus by his jacket and brought him towards her face. Him, Zeus. Out of all the mortals across the world, you gave him your blessing. How could you do this to me? I gave him to you, to watch and protect, to nurture and help grow, and you stabbed me in the back, you coward. He wanted this life, Althea. Zeus shouted back, hoping to reason with her, but little did he know that comment only enraged her more. Althea threw Zeus at the ground, making him bounce twice, letting out gasp of pain. His a child, damn you. What does a child know about this life of ours? It brings nothing but pain and misery. It is not the life I wanted for him, and it is damn well not the life his mother wanted either. Althea bit back tears at thinking of her sister, but now is not the time. Althea took a moment to gather herself, before stating her resolve. I've come to take him away, Zeus, from you, from this life you filled his head with. It's nothing but empty words and promises. Where is he, Zeus? Althea was staring at the god laying on the ground, remorseless as he tried to regain the ability to breath. Althea, we talked about this. I thought that we would try to embrace this new chapter of our lives. Zod said, walking past her and helping Zeus sit up. I know we did, Zod, but upon seeing all this Althea made a point of showing where exactly they were at, literally at the cusp of Dragon Valley. I can't allow it, not this, it's too much for a child. Please, Zeus, tell me where he is. I want to see Bel. Althea was almost begging in her tone. For over 7 years, she hadn't laid eyes on her nephew, and now that the moment was here, she just wanted it to be over. Who the hell is Bel? Hera was left with so many questions that she couldn't help but scream. She had never seen Althea show so much emotion before in the 20-plus years since she joined Hera Familia, so whoever this bellboy was must be someone so important that the lady whose title is literally silence caused her to break down screaming. I'm Bel, and I'm right here. Bel's sudden appearance caused everyone to look at him, with multiple sets of eyes going wide as saucers at the young man that was standing before them. Bel had been there the whole time, while Zeus was laying bricks in the front left side of the house. Bel was doing the same thing on the back left side. He heard the carriage long before it stopped in front of the house and had already armed himself with his sword in case the people were less than friendly, deciding to wait for Zeus to start the conversation and attempt to surprise the would-be bandits if they thought the elderly man was by himself. But upon hearing Zeus address one of the people as Zod, did Bel's will falter. He liked the sound of his voice. It was the voice of an older man, but full of tenderness, like a father. It wasn't until he heard her name did Bel truly let go any of sort of plan of attack. While her voice was filled with anger, it was almost angelic to his ears. He loved the way it sounded. It calmed him and soothed his soul. He yearned to hear more, and creeped closer to the front side of the house. Hearing her call him a child, did Bel look at the window on the side of the house, and his reality hit him like a sledgehammer straight to his chest. He wasn't her Bel. She was accepting a child, not him, and he wondered if she would hate him, if she would find his existence disgusting. He robbed her of this timeline's Belle, and he was prettified of what that could spell for their future. A future he didn't know he wanted so bad. Hearing the last person scream, did Belle steel himself for the inevitability that was to come? Sooner or later he had to confront this aspect of traveling to the past. Might as well get it over with while the fire was hot. Zeus, who at that? Zod asked as calmly as he could. He knew Althea was having a breakdown just by the look of shock on her face. That's a Belle, we have a lot to talk about. Zeus replied, scratching the top of his head. Oh, well fuck. Zod just bit his lip at the headache this was going to cause him. Hera stood at the carriage absolutely flabbergasted at the sight before her. On one hand, this young man before her was truly a specimen of the best man can provide. On the other hand, he bore such a striking resemblance to her favorite child that she couldn't help it. Materia? Hera asked as tears fell down her face, causing Belle to take on a downtrodden look. No, I'm sorry, I'm not my mother. Belle replied sadly at the woman asking him if he was his mother. She was beautiful, he thought, but also thought she must be freezing in such little clothing. Oh my gods, you're her son. Hera clapped her hands over her mouth, feeling the tears roll down her hands and getting her chest wet. She ran towards Belle, shoving the still stunned Althea slightly, wrapping her arms around Belle, crying into his chest. Belle was slightly put off, especially as he felt the mysterious woman's breast push him into, but he slowly embraced the woman back, thinking that she needed this a lot more than he did. Who are you exactly? Belle asked after a minute of the woman crying. He was beginning to feel awkward, with everyone still staring at him. Oh my dear boy, I'm Hera. I guess you would say I'm your grandma. Hera replied, letting go of Belle, clasping his face between her hands. I have a grandma. What the hell, Zeus? Belle was actually upset with his grandpa for hiding this fact from him. Zeus began to shake his head violently. Belle, you don't understand. Your grandma is crazy. Zeus tried to warn his grandson about the true face of Hera, but before he could, Hera snapped her neck towards him, almost daring him to finish his sentence. I am not crazy, Zeus. Hera pointed her finger at Zeus, almost as if it was dagger ready to sink into his flesh. I am passionate. Zeus and Zod shared a look between each other, having the same thought. Shit, the Yander is coming out. Of course, dear. How silly of me to say that. Zeus was trying to calm Hera down, hopefully. He'll get away from this without getting stabbed again. Oh, don't you fucking dare me. You hid this from me, for however many years old he is. Not just you, but all of you hid him from me. You hid Materia's son from me, my own daughter's son, a girl I took into my family, who I took care of, who I loved, and who I couldn't even bury when I felt her pass from this world. My favorite daughter, I wasn't even able to be beside her when her sickness took her, and you decided without me to take her son and run away. You are all cowards, and may you burn in hell for it. Hera spat at everyone present. She couldn't believe the betrayal she just came to face. Grandma, it's okay. Belle tried to interject on behalf of his grandfather at least, but was silenced as Hera put her finger on his lips. Hera had to admit, it made her feel giddy inside to hear her grandson call her grandma, but that's for another time. Sure, it's okay, Belle honey. Grammy is going to take you away from all these backstabbing bastards. We're going to go to her house on the beach, where you can do whatever you want. Go wherever you want, and we can be together, like we were always meant to be. Hera smiled sweetly at Belle, thinking of all the great times that were ahead of them. She wrapped her hands in Belle's hands and started to walk away, before feeling a tug at Belle's end. Belle, what's wrong, sweetie? Hera looked back at Belle, finding him firmly planted in place. I can't go with you, Hera. I'm sorry. My place is here. This is where I belong, for the time being. Belle gave Hera a smile that warmed her heart. But Belle, the beach, we could live together there, free of worries. Hera tried once again to walk away, but Belle pulled her backwards. I'm sorry, but that life is behind me now. I can never live free of worries ever again. This time Belle pulled Hera into an embrace, causing Hera to blush slightly. I would love it if you stayed here with me though, Grandma. I think it would be nice to get to know you after all this time. Belle let himself shed a tear, hopeful for a positive answer. Hera stood still for a second, before embracing Belle back, digging her nails into his shirt and almost clawing his back. Hera knew in that instant that Belle asked her to stay, that she would make the world burn, before ever leaving his side again. She might not have been there when Materia passed away, or for much of Belle's life, but every second for the rest of her days on Genkai, she'll spend it with Belle. Of course I'll stay. I'll do whatever you want, Belle, until the day you pass from this world. You can rely on your grandma to be by your side. Hera cried some more before calming down again, letting Belle go, realizing that she was not the only one the young man needed to talk to. It didn't take long before Belle found himself standing in front of the Titan, Zod. For a second, they just stared at each other. While Belle had a growth spurt, he was still dwarfed by Zod. You must be dashed. Belle had begun the introduction, but before he could finish, he felt them on him. Eyes. Belle quickly thought, unsheathing his sword in a flash of second, pointing it in the direction he sensed the glare coming from. You were followed. Belle shouted out, sparring Althea out of her stunned state. Zod was momentarily caught off guard by Belle's sudden action, but sensing the urgency and the tone the young man used, he got ready for whoever was coming their way. You've been made. Come out now and we may lenient. Belle yelled. He didn't know who at, or how many, but through months of Freya staring at him constantly, he knew when someone was watching him. A few seconds passed before they saw some form of movement, shimmering in the morning snow. You are quite hard to find, young man. Belle instantly recognized the almost inhuman voice as coming from someone he knew and was great friends with in his previous timeline. Fells. Belle exclaimed loudly before running towards the great sage, who upon hearing their name being called out by someone they've never met, was rightfully confused, and so undid their cloak of invisibility, being even more shocked when the young man they'd been searching for the past 2 months pulled them into a tight vice grip, threatening to break their brittle bones. I do not believe we've ever met before, young man. Would you be so kind as to unhand me? Fells asked, almost begging to be let go before something in their body breaks. Yes, of course, sorry, Fells, but my gods, Fells, you have to tell me. How are they? Are they okay? Belle grasped Fells by the shoulders, maybe a little too tight. Young man, please calm yourself. Who are you talking about? Fells was not expecting to be interrogated. If anything, he was supposed to be the one asking the questions. The Xenos. Fells. Are they okay? Belle's question not only shocked Fells, but Zeus and Hera as well, as they shared a look before beginning to approach Belle and Fells. If Fells had eyes, they would be as wide as possible. How do you know about the Xenos? Their existence is to be kept secret at all costs. Fells finally began asking their own questions. I will explain my knowledge, if you just answer my question. Tears were beginning to form in Belle's eyes. Please tell me, are they doing okay? I just want to know if they're safe. Fells wasn't sure what the boy's ploy was, but he seemed sincere enough in his concern. Yes, they are fine to my best knowledge. Fells relented, maybe giving some information will prove fruitful in the long run. Fells finally noticed that the white-haired boy wasn't alone anymore. Soon enough, the whole party of everyone present was standing before him. Hey, Skelly boy, long time no see. Zeus sent a quip towards Fells. He remembered when they still had skin. I am glad you don't have that repugnant odor anymore. Hera wrinkled her nose at Fells. Lord Zeus and Lady Hera, I bid you good morning. Fells gave a slight bow at the two elder gods. What's the meaning of this visit anyhow, you little old lapdog? Zeus was beginning to not like Fells being here at all times. The young man's presence has been requested. Fells answered honestly. By whom? Zeus didn't like where this conversation was going. He knew who Fells worked with, and the implications was becoming uncomfortable. By me. Everyone present felt as if their stomachs were being twisted and churned, except for Fells, who didn't have a stomach anymore. Air environment shifted and changed, and within the blink of an eye their location was different. Before they stood in front of Dragon Valley, with the cold wind biting their skin and the sun bathing them in its warmth. Now, they stood in a dark and humid place, suffocating at the sudden change of atmosphere. It only took a few seconds for them to realize where exactly they got teleported to. In front of them was a stairway leading straight up to a throne, and sitting on the throne was the god who ruled over Rio and kept the dungeon in check. Uranos. Zeus uttered the first god to descend to Genkai's name in a hushed tone, almost in reverence. Everyone got on one knee and bowed to the father of Rio, showing respect to the eldest god. Everyone except one, Belcranel stood firm before the god, looking at the god sitting upon his throne, with a form of understanding that no one else had. Bel, what are you doing? Zeus hissed at his newest son, wondering why he wasn't kneeling. Why waste the effort, old man? He brought me here to kill me. Bel said calmly, while everyone else's eyes went wide with fear. Zeus immediately shot up and stood next to Bel. Whatever fate awaited Bel, he would share it. Uranos raised his eyebrow at Zeus's antics, but was more surprised by the young man knowing his intention. While that may be true, young man, I am not without understanding. I will allow you to plead your case. Then, and only then, will I make my decision. Uranos gave a slight nudge of his hand, signaling for Bel to begin. Bel looked at his grandfather and looked back at the others who were all staring at him. Bel closed his eyes and took one more long breath. He prayed that he would live to see the end of today. He wanted nothing more than to talk to her. Just one time. My name is Belcranel, I am 14 years old, and I am from a different timeline. In my timeline, the one-eyed black dragon attacked Orario before we could properly prepare, and thus Orario fell, and the dungeon was unleashed upon the word once again. You, along with Zeus and the goddesses Hestia, Freya, and Loki, got together with a god by the name of Kronos, and through means unknown to me, was somehow able to send me backwards in time, to now, where I asked Zeus to bless me with his Falna, so that I may begin training and helping the world prepare for the dragon's return. Bel's answer was truthful and straight to the point. Uranos sat silently, staring at Bel, before he turned his palm upwards. The book. Uranos had a feeling at what power brought Bel to this time, but he needed to make sure. Bel prepared himself before outstretching his right hand. Belcranel. Upon Bel reciting his name and beckoning the book to come, did it slowly descend into being, falling flat on Bel's hand. Hero and Hermes recoiled at the sight of the book, while Zard, Althea, and Asphi all began to quiver in slight fear, and the dungeon let out a growl of displeasure. Uranos made a motion, and the book went soaring towards him, only stopping in front of his face. Opening the book with his right hand, slowly the pages of the book turned, one after another. Everyone waited in still silence, unsure if Uranos would be pleased enough to allow Bel to live. Before long, Uranos closed the book, and with a flick of his wrist the book was dismissed, finally allowing the mortals in the room to breathe a sigh of relief at last. It felt as if a weight was resting on them for what seemed to be eternity. The ancient god leaned forward, focusing his entire being on Bel, testing the young mortals' merit. When he realized that he couldn't bend Belcranel to his will, did he come to his answer? You are an abomination, an anomaly that shouldn't exist, and if I had a better mind, I wouldn't allow you to. Uranos spoke in a flat tone, before relaxing back into his seat, giving only the slightest bit of a grin. But I am not so foolish to look a gift horse in the mouth and turn it away. I have faith that you will prove to be useful in the coming days, and the years to come afterwards. You may live, for now, Belcranel. Before everyone could congratulate Bel, Fels whispered something in Uranos' ear, and with a nod of his head, he flicked his finger, and everyone was gone in an instant except for Bel. Bel was shocked to say the least before looking at the pair atop the throne. Lord Uranos. Bel was confused at being the only one left. You wish to meet the Xenos? It was not a question. I would like that very much, yes. Bel gave a heartfelt smile. That can be arranged, in time, for now be satisfied with knowing that they are doing well, and preparations will be made to accommodate your meeting. Bel was overfilled with joy, and gave a bow to the god. With another flick of his finger, was Bel sent away, leaving the god and his attendee alone in the room of prayer. My lord, I wouldn't dare doubt your insight, but are you sure about this? Fels had known Uranos for over 800 years, and this was the first time he ever questioned him. His chronicle told no lies. Fels. Belcranel has the potential to become the strongest adventure to ever live, given time. View it as an investment of sorts. The more resources we pour into helping Belcranel towards his goal, the bigger the payout will be at the end. Uranos was doing an outstanding job at hiding his intrigue. If he had found Bel before Zeus, he pondered if he would have given Bel his own blessing. Fels was slightly satisfied with the answer and gave a bow before leaving to make preparations for the meeting that would come. leaving Uranos alone. How will you affect the game, young Belcranel, and what piece will our opponent come up with to balance the playing field? Uranos knew a war was coming to Orario, and he wondered how Belcranel's appearance would affect it. Alfea, to say the least, was panicking. She finally understood the facts of the situation, and when she could at last come to terms and express herself to Bel, they vanished, and Bel was nowhere to be seen. So many thoughts filled her head. As the seconds ticked by, they turned terrible. What if Uranos changed his mind? Alfea, it's okay. Zod was trying to reason with her, seeing her panic. What if I never see him again? What if he's gone and all I did was stare at him? Alfea, please, everything is okay. Zod grabbed her, trying to shake reason back into her, which somewhat worked as Alfea stopped and looked at Zod. I didn't even get the chance to tell him I loved him. The look Alfea gave Zod broke a piece of him, but before he could respond they heard a whistle, and just a few meters from them stood Bel, perfectly fine and content. Before any sound came out of anyone's mouth, Alfea used the full speed her Falna gave her, as she launched herself at Bel, embracing the boy into a hug, crying into his neck as he barely stood taller than her. Bel was confused before the dam broke for himself, as he cried with her, standing there in the morning sun, a reunion that would have never happened, defied fate. I thought you would have hated me. Bel cried out. You silly boy, the only thing I hate are your eyes. They belong to that dreadful father of yours. Alfea gave a slight chuckle. Come on, my father couldn't have been that bad. Bel tried to reason, but the look Alfea gave him told him enough about her true opinion about his dad. That bad? Bel grimaced. He got my already dying sister pregnant, which more than likely led to her death. Bel, I am grateful that I have you, make no mistake, but I wish I could have killed him myself. Alfea was pretty adamant towards her feelings. Bel just gave a supportive nod before continuing the hug. After a few minutes the pair finally separate, leaving Hera jealous as can be, even. She didn't get to hold Bel so long, but she couldn't do anything as Zeus had dragged her to meet and talk with Hermes. Soon enough, Bel once again found himself standing before Zod, the behemoth of a man. Zod began to eye him up and down, studying his frame, to the way he was standing, before landing eyes on the sword on Bel's hip. Impressive sword. Zod couldn't deny the craftsmanship on the blade, but was curious on how Bel got a hold of it. Thank you, it was a gift from Zeus. Bel answered proudly. Oh really? And where did Zeus get such a blade? Now Zod was very curious. He'd never seen the blade before, and he needed answers. He told me it was meant for his former captain, Maxim, but he never got to see it. Bel's head hung low. Zeus had told him the truth one night after a few glasses of wine. Bel still felt guilty about wielding such a weapon, but what else was he to fight monsters with? Zod's reaction, on the other hand, wasn't so nice. He picked up the still-sheathed sword by the belt, alongside Bel with Zeus. Zod yelled out, causing his god to look back from the conversation he was currently having, going wide-eyed at seeing what exactly Zod was holding. What is this? As Zod shook the blade, Bel shook as well, letting out little screams. It was meant to be a gift dash. Zeus was cut off from the look Zod gave him. How much, Zeus? Zod asked, the last vestiges of calmness hanging by a thread. It doesn't have value, it's priceless. Zeus started to wave his hands, trying to save face. Priceless is in the eyes of the beholder, and in my eyes, this sword has a value, so I will ask. One more time, old god of mine, how much was this sword to craft? Zod was not going to ask again. Zeus mumbled something that Zod couldn't pick up with his advanced hearing. But Hera heard, and she let out a gasp before slapping her hands over her mouth. Zeus, please tell me you did not spend that much on a fucking sword. Hera asked as she began to giggle. Oh my fuck, Zeus, please tell me how much Valis did you spend? Zod was damn nearing having a heart attack at this point. Like, 500 million Valis. Zeus finally relented. Zod and Bel shared a look before. He lightly placed Bel on the ground, gave Bel a few pats on the head, before proceeding to walk menacingly towards Zeus. Zeus tried to plead for mercy, but Zod was having none of it, as he bonked Zeus hard on the head. You put our Familia in the red, for a sword that was never used for 7 years. Are you kidding me, Zeus? Zod was furious. This was a slap in the face for him. He didn't even want To believe his god was so foolish to have a sword made that expensive. It was meant to be the crown piece of our Familia Zard, passed down from captain to captain. It was to signify our victory on the three great quest. I just wanted to reward my sons for all their hard work and the sacrifices that we've made along the way. Zeus understood where Zard was coming from when he got the check after the sword was forged. Even he almost went back to Tenkai from the shock of the price. You are possibly the most foolish god to have ever descended from Tenkai, but you're my foolish god, and I know you had the sword made from a good place, so thank you, Zeus. I'm sure if Maxim was alive, he'd be ecstatic with it. Zard gave Zeus a nice pat on the back, like old times' sake. But now Althea was curious, as she walked to Hera with a question of her own. Did you make us anything for ... Althea didn't even get to finish her sentence, before Hera interrupted her with laughter. Fuck no. Hera's laugh became even more hysteric at Althea's disappointed look, before being replaced by screams of pain, as Althea gripped Hera by her ears, pulling them in all sorts of directions. You fucking bitch, knock it off, that hurts. Oh no, you're not getting away easy this time, ain't no one left to protect you. Althea seemed to be enjoying causing her goddess pain, a little too much if you asked Belle. But, seeing the four of them like this, it brought an old kind of feeling to Belle, a feeling he hadn't experienced for quite a while. He felt at home, with a family. But like all good things, it must come to an end. Belle's happy time came to an end when he felt a familiar hand slide up his back and wrap around his shoulder. It didn't take much to know whose hand it was. Hermes, you sly little god. How may I be of service to one as questionable as you? Belle looked at the taller god, with a look of contempt. You wound me, little Belle. I remember helping Zeus escape with you, only 7 years ago. You were nothing but a babe, but now look at you. You're something of a folk hero around these parts, and maybe you can be a hero we all so desperately want. Hermes had that twinkle in his eye, that same twinkle that caused quite a bit of issues for Belle before. Perhaps I can be, but for now, I'm rather satisfied with where I'm at. But speaking of where one should be, shouldn't you be heading back to Rio already? I do believe you are much more needed there than here. Belle was having none of Hermes's schemes, and he'd much prefer the traveling god get to traveling. As much as it pains me so, I do believe you are right. Hermes gave Belle a sly smile, before walking towards the group to say his goodbyes, leaving Belle alone, which caused Belle to glance towards Asfi, who was busy unpacking what appeared to be loads of boxes and chests. Hey, let me help, Asfi. Least I can do for traveling all the way out here. Belle began unloading some of the chest from the carriage alongside her. Oh, thank you, but to be frank with you, after hearing your story, while I still can't believe it, makes me never want to complain about traveling ever again. Asfi let out a dry chuckle. Don't let Hermes hear you say that, or he'll never let you go home. Belle's response caused Asfi to let out a groan, which caused Belle to laugh at her expense. Were me and you friends of sorts, if you don't mind me asking? Asfi was honestly curious, but hoped not to offend him. After a few moments of silence, Asfi feared she might have, but was relieved once Belle actually gave an answer. I would say we were friends, yes. At the very least we had friends in common, and sadly, Hermes liked to play a more active role in my life, thus you were a forced participant in a lot of his schemes. Belle had little reason to hide the truth from Asfi, now that he thought about, and being closer to her, did Belle notice something. How old are you, Asfi? When Belle knew her, she was years older than him, but now she looks closer to his age. Asfi was slightly taken aback at the comment, but she figured he didn't mean any harm by it. I'm 15, I'll be 16 next year. Asfi answered honestly. How old was I when we met? I believe you were in your 20s if I'm not mistaken. Belle recollected he never bothered to ask anyone how old they were in his past, mostly because Zeus had told him it was rude to ask a woman their age. Gods, I'm surprised I lived that long. Asfi couldn't believe Hermes didn't kill her sooner, with all the stress he causes her. I know, I couldn't imagine being captain for Hermes. Belle let out a chuckle, before noticing the look of shock and horror on Asfi's face. What's wrong, Asfi? Asfi shuffled around as she unloaded the last box from the carriage. Locking eyes with Belle, did he notice the tears threatening to spill out? I'm not captain. Asfi answered dryly, worried about her own Familia's future. Belle's own Face matched hers just a second ago. Oh, I mean dashed up. Asfide, it's time to hit the road. Best get going before the roads become completely unpassable. Hermes had come just in time to end the conversation, grabbing Esfi by the arm and beginning to drag her way to the front of the carriage. But Esfi tried to get some form of closure from Belle, but was forced to sit down by Hermes, who gave her a serious look, which caused her to go silent. Hermes began walking towards a now distraught Belle. Hermes, I didn't know, I'm sorry. Belle looked on the verge of tears. Hermes just placed his hands on Belle's shoulders. It's okay, Belle, I know you didn't mean any harm. But take this as a lesson for the future. You might know what will happen, but we don't. Choose your actions wisely, and your words, even more so. You are still a child, Belle, but we gods have entrusted so much to you, that I pray you find the strength to carry all of the world's burden on your shoulders. Hermes began to walk away before turning back. Come spring, we'll come back to bring supplies and seeds so that you may begin farming and really turning this spot into a home to be. Hermes mounted the carriage and gave the horses the signal to march onwards back south, towards Rio. Belle stood there, motionless, thinking how something as simple as a light joke affected Asfi so much, and wondered how his actions from here on out could affect the world, both positively and negatively. I know what you're thinking, Belle. Don't worry about things like that for the time being. Belle was shocked at how stealthily Alfea snuck up on him, but caked it up to her Falna. Both of them watched the carriage go into the distance before disappearing over a hill, presumably not to be seen for a few months. Alfea couldn't help but notice how much Belle kept glancing at her, before finally getting to a point where she couldn't ignore it. Is there something on my face? Alfea asked, turning towards Belle but refusing to meet his eyes. Belle blushed, before he scratched the back of his head. You're very beautiful, you know. Belle answered shyly, like a child that got caught sneaking candy, causing Alfea to look at Belle inquisitively. I've been told that by many men, for many years, so I'm going to ask you the same thing. I've asked them. Alfea got closer to Belle, almost touching him. If I'm not happy with the answer, then I'm going to do the same thing to you. I'm going to punch you, and I promise, it will hurt. Belle gulped in response, causing Alfea to grin manically. Ready? Alfea asked Belle, giving him one chance to back out. But to her surprise, Belle took a breath in and got a look of determination before giving a nod in confirmation. Alfea was impressed. Slightly. What makes me beautiful? Alfea asked. The question caused many men to become stuttering messes, not expecting Alfea to ask them such a simple question after they professed her beauty. They expected Alfea to be like some common girl who would squeal in delight. After such a dumb compliment, of course she was beautiful. She didn't need some simpleton to tell her that. But to Alfea's shock, Belle actually stifled a laugh with his fist, before letting it all out. Belle's laugh was nothing but joy and happiness, unimpeded by whatever events happened prior. Such happiness even affected Alfea, as she felt a tinge of joy touch her heart. It was a laugh so full of life, that it reminded Alfea of how her sister used to laugh. What makes you beautiful? What isn't beautiful about you? Belle answered from his soul, causing Alfea's cheeks to burn slightly. I don't even know where to start. Your right eye reminds of the forest of the elves, so green and full of life, while your left eye is like staring at a gray moonstone, filled with knowledge and wisdom. Your hair shines like moonlight, and it looks finer than the best silks found around the world. Not to mention your voice. It sounds like the best orchestra is always playing whenever you talk. It fills my soul with peace. Something that I didn't know I could find in this world for a long time. Belle's answer left Alfea speechless. I'm really happy I could finally meet my aunt. I have so many questions for you. Alfea let out a sigh, shaking her head. Almost perfect. Alfea met Belle's eyes, before pulling her right fist back and punching Belle right in the gut, causing him to be thrown back a few meters, causing the remainder of the party to let out a collective "oh" at seeing Belle being punched. I thought you would have liked my answer, Belle said through labored breathing. Alfea slowly walked up to him before glancing down at him. I did, Belle. It made me happy, but you called me aunt. Alfea shook her head at that. I'm not that old. Alfea gave Belle a slight smile, deciding to rejoin the others still at the cabin. Duly noted. Belle gave in response, before standing up on his own and walking slowly Behind Althea. Once everyone was standing outside the door, did Zeus acknowledge that this was indeed happening? For the first time in a very long time, was Zeus and Hera going to be living together with their familiars. Well, no time like the present. Come on in, folks, there is too much to discuss. Zeus opened the door, revealing a quaint cottage on the inside, a small kitchen area, a smaller living room, with a single table and 2 chairs, the best part being the fireplace, nicely built with a stone block finish. Belle, get some more fire going. We're going to be here a while. Sure thing, Gramps. Belle was the first one inside and began collecting some firewood and throwing it into the already dying fire. Once everyone else shuffled their way in, Hera made a beeline for one of the chairs, planting herself in the one that had a cushion, sticking her tongue at everyone else. Shortly before, Althea flipped her out the chair with a single hand and taking the seat for herself. Hera mumbled some incoherent words before ripping the other chair out of Zeus's hands before he could sit, and sat herself. I guess I'll stand in the kitchen and get some tea brewing. Zeus rolled his eyes before making his way towards the kitchen, before being stopped again by Zod shaking his head. Your tea is horrid, old man. Let me brew it this time, yeah. Zod looked at Zeus with a grimace, making his way to the kitchen. Well, fuck me then. Zeus just threw his hands in the air, leaning against the wall of his own home. Belle couldn't help but smile. He could get used to this, but the fire was having some difficulty recatching, so he decided to nudge it. Firebolt. Belle let out a little spark of fire, helping the fire reignite. Holy shit, you know magic. Hera shot of her chair with a little too much excitement for Althea's liking. She quickly kicked Hera in the shin, causing Hera to let out a hiss at her. Zeus laughed at Hera's expense. You really are related. Belle did the same thing to me not too long ago. Zeus rubbed his own shin with his hand. Yes, Grandma, I know magic. I actually learned it from a grimoire that was a gift from a friend. Belle smiled warmly at the thought of better times. Oh really? Who would gift such a nice thing to my dear grandbaby? Hera asked all happily. Belle, no. Zeus tried to stop Belle from answering, but it was all for naught. Freya. Belle answered innocently, before noticing the atmosphere in the room change and the hairs on the back of his neck stand. Belle swore he felt death waiting for him as he turned around to see everyone just staring at Hera. In fairness to Hera, she did look rather upset. Her right eye was twitching, and her nails were digging in the table. Grandma? Belle asked, nervously. That fucking bitch gave you a grimoire. Hera was seething. I wouldn't call her that, but yes, Freya gave me a lot things. We were good friends. Belle wasn't lying when he said that, but the tone gave some unhelpful suggestions to everyone present. Oh, okay. The two of you were friends, Hera began licking the inside of the cheek. Is that what kids in your time call that? Being friends? Yeah, your grandpa over there had a lot of friends too. Hera began scaring Belle. Grandma, we were just friends. It was complicated, sure, but just friends. Belle tried to plead that he and Freya were strictly friends, nothing more, but the damage was done. Yeah, friendships tend to get complicated when you start fucking each. Hera was having none of whatever Belle was saying. Grandma. Belle became as red as a tomato at that. We weren't doing that. I'm still. You know. Belle tried to give some kind of hint, but wasn't exactly used to this sort of conversation being so blunt. At least with Zeus, he was more innuendo most of the time. I know what, Belle. Hera was staring deadpanned at Belle. The boy is still a virgin, Hera. Zeus finally came to Belle's rescue, only for Hera to be shocked and look back at Zeus. While no words were shared, he knew what the look was for. I know, I've been trying, honey, but the boy doesn't want it. But look at him, he's easily the best-looking guy within 100 kilometers. I'm surprised you don't have women banging at the door trying to throw themselves at him. Hera was honestly surprised at the situation. I fucking know. Do you know that a really pretty village chief cooked him a roast? And at first he turned her down. I had to make him go to her. And then, what does he do? He leaves. Before the night ends, without having dessert. Zeus was finally happy someone understood his predicament with Belle. Grandpa, really? Belle snapped at Zeus. Zeus was still refusing to drop that discussion. That's a little rude, Belle, if I'm being honest. Do you know how long it takes to make a good roast? Zod had finally finished making the tea and was placing it on the table. Althea and Hera both served themselves first, and Belle had to admit, the tea smelt pretty good compared to Zeus'S. Not you to Zard, AUN dash dot. Belle almost finished that sentence before noticing that Alfea was looking at him with an eyebrow raised while sipping her hot tea. Alfea, please come to my rescue. Alfea finished sipping her tea before looking at Belle and shook her head no. Your sexual relationship, or relationships, are your own, my dear nephew, Alfea said calmly, before resuming drinking her tea. Belle looked defeated. You know what we have to do, Zeus. Tie Belle down to one of the beds, get 2 or 3 village girls, invite them over, we'll stay out for the night and come back sometime the next day. Hera seemed rather pleased with her idea. Why village girls, Hera? Zard asked from the kitchen, as he was checking over what kind of food he was working with for the foreseeable future. Oh Zard, you simple-minded brute. Hera pitied him truly, which caused to roll his eyes as he found a nice piece of tenderloin that he might want to make for dinner. These country girls live a rough life. They are used to working the fields with hoes and the like, so they are good at handling hard wood. To harvest certain crops, they have to be on their hands and knees. They are used to milking cows and such. And the cooking. Now I like the finer things of life, but country cooking is unique in its own way. So after Belle has had a most wonderful night, I'm sure those girls will whip him up a spectacular breakfast. Hera smiled at the thought, before looking at Belle, and was shocked when he had a face with no emotion. I should have taken my chances in Rio, was all Belle said before taking a glass and serving himself some tea as well. Upon taking a sip, did Belle's body relax? Oh yeah, much better than Grandpa's. Fine, I'll drop it for now. Hera was twirling her finger in her own glass of tea. For a moment there was a calm peace in the room, but everyone knew what the real topic of the day was. Zeus, Belle's status sheet. Belle was taken aback at how casual Hera was requesting to see his status. But almost like a spring that had been waiting, Zeus sprung up from the wall, with a kick to his step. All right, gather round, let me show you what we're working with. Zeus went to retrieve his handbag that he'd been keeping all of Belle's status sheets for the past 2 months. Alfea asked as she put down her glass of tea. Alfea, must I mention again, we did talk about this. Zard came around the corner of the kitchen with his hands full of spices. I know, but still. Alfea was still rather uncomfortable with the thought that Belle had a Falna, and now from the looks of things, Zard and herself might be taking a more active role. I'm not a child, Alfea. I was a very accomplished adventurer in my time. Belle said proudly. Oh, is that right? And how long were you an adventurer? Alfea asked curiously. A year. Belle's answer made Hera, Zard, and Alfea looked at one another, with Hera giggling at the end. 1 whole year. Belle, that isn't all that impressive, I'm sorry to say. Zard was honest with his critique. Alfea was not. Oh, a mighty adventure stands before us. Let me guess you got to level 2 dash dot. Alfea had begun her own slew of to-be insults. Level 7. Belle interrupted her. Alfea momentarily paused, thinking she must have misheard him. What? Alfea asked for some clarification. I got to level 7 in 1 year. Belle said again, placing his cup of tea on the table, crossing his arms. Zard and Alfea looked at one another, questioning the legitimacy of such a claim. Belle, you can't expect us to believe that. That's impossible for anyone. It takes years to become a first-class adventurer, and even longer to reach level 7. Zard was trying to find reason in Belle's statement. But Alfea was studying Belle closely. If Belle and her sister were anything alike, then they were both terrible liars. Hera, on the other hand, was having a crisis. She knew Belle wasn't lying, but couldn't wrap her head around how that was possible. Unless Hera had a eureka moment. A skill. Hera smiled, and when she saw Belle give her a smirk, did her smile widen even further. Now we're talking. Zeus, hurry up, I'm getting antsy. Hera was bouncing in her seat like a child at a fair. Yes, I got them right here. Zeus came back with his hands full of papers, before he pulled only the top status sheet out. Everyone began gathering around Zeus, even Belle, but was quickly stopped by Zeus when he raised his hand. Still Zeus. Really? Belle was even more annoyed now. Just a few more moments, Belle, then it's all yours to look at, I promise. Zeus said as he showed the group the first sheet of paper. This is Belle's status when I first gave him my blessing. Belle saw everyone's eyes go wide. Even Alfia's was shocked beyond reason. What the fuck is this? Hera asked. Belle got to apparently keep all his skills, magic, and development abilities from his previous timeline. Zeus answered. Zard pointed to something in particular on the sheet. That skill must be how he got to level 7 in just a short amount of time. It's stronger than any skill I've ever seen, and the potential is limitless. Zard rubbed his chin, thinking of ways to train Belle. He was excited for the challenge. Alfia was studying everything as well, but she saw something that interested her. Luck. All of Belle's other DAs she'd seen before or heard of, never luck though. Oh, that's a fun one. Belle interjected, causing everyone to look at him. Grandpa, you still have those poker cards of yours? Belle took over where Hera was sitting. Yeah, give me a sec. Zeus quickly grabbed his cards and handed the cards to Belle. Belle motioned for Zard to sit down, which Zard did after a moment. Belle passed the cards to him, which made Zard give him a questioning look. Well, pass them out. Don't worry about shuffling them. I'm going to win anyway. Belle's response made Zard raise his eyebrow, before passing 5 cards to Belle and 5 cards to himself. Zard picked up his hand and was pleased when he saw 4 fours. 4 of a kind. Nice. Zard smiled but was unnerved when he saw that Belle didn't even pick up his hand. Go ahead, Zard, call it. Belle's cool demeanor made Zard ponder if he wanted to or not. He flipped his cards over. 4 of a kind. Zard said confidently. Oh nice, and let me see what I have. Belle finally flipped his cards, revealing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in all clovers. Well, ain't that a shame? Straight flush. Everyone was shocked at the odd value of such a DA, except for Alfia, who was sorely disappointed. You took a development ability so that you could win card games. Alfia was not impressed. No, you're misunderstanding it. Anything that has to do with probability, the scales are always tipped in my favor. Card games and the like are trivial. I could walk into a casino and clean house very easily. As a matter of fact, I was banned from all the casinos in Rio because I kept winning. Belle shrugged. While silly to him, he understood he had a rather unfair advantage. Damn right you were. But fuck em, casinos are predators who look for prey. You just flipped the tables. Zeus was quite proud of his grandson. Besides, it's not just card games. Rare monster drops become more common for me. Evolved monsters are easier to find. Take that as you will, but I also might find myself in situations that wouldn't normally be possible because of luck. Again, take that as you will. Alfia was beginning to understand the true value of luck, but was still skeptical. Hera was narrow-eyed. As she stared at the status sheet, something wasn't right. Zeus, these skills are blocked out. Why? Hera was now more curious at what Zeus was hiding. Belle was slightly angered at what Hera said. Are you going to hide skills from me to Zeus? Belle stood up facing his grandfather. No, I'm not, Belle. I was just waiting is all. Now, let's update your status sheet, and all will be revealed. Zeus saw what happened when Hestia finally revealed her little secret to Belle, and the aftermath was not pretty. Belle relented and quickly took his shirt off, and only heard a gasp before he saw the faces of Hera, Zard, and Alfia looking at him. Fucking hell, Belle, what did this you? Zard had his own fair share of scars, but nothing to the severity of Belle's. You don't get to level 7 in a year without some tough battles. Most of these scars are from monsters, but there's some from other adventures. You have to realize that once we found out we were on a clock ticking down every day, desperation set in. We pushed more and more into the dungeon. It was all we could do. Try to get more people to level up, try to get others stronger, until the losses grew too much. We couldn't afford to sacrifice anymore. People, there's only so much you can do, until you just can't. Belle remembered all of those who gave their lives, not just his fellow adventurers, but the Xenos as well. Belle got lost in thought for a moment, only to be brought back by a gingerly touch on his right arm, tracing a white line. Alfia. Belle asked his aunt. He didn't like the way she looked, almost heartbroken, just staring at his body. Your arm, it got cut off. Alfia left her right hand there, almost wondering what could have done something so horrible to her nephew. Yeah, it did. Luckily it was healed by a good friend of mine, so it functions just fine. Belle said with a smile, trying his best to make his aunt happy. Did you kill what caused this? Did you win? Althea asked her nephew. She needed to know. That Bel got his victory at the end. Bel grabbed Althea's hand softly, giving it a squeeze. I did win that fight, with the help of a dear friend, one that I can't wait to see again. Bel thought fondly of Ryu, wondering when they would meet. Althea seemed relieved with his answer, stepping away for Zeus to do Bel's status update. Not even a few seconds later did Bel feel the similar warmth of his back as Zeus updated his status, which shouldn't be all too impressive considering Bel hasn't gone out to hunt any monsters. All done. Zeus quickly copied Bel's untempered status to a sheet of paper before handing to Hera alone. Hera snatched the paper away before looking at it what Zeus kept hidden. Hera was slightly worried about the meaning of one of the new skills, but the other one did Hera let out a laugh. Argonaut, it truly is a skill befitting a hero to be. But this new skill is quite, how would I say, unbefitting of a hero. Wouldn't you agree, Bel? Hera outstretched the paper towards Bel, and after getting a confirming nod from Zeus did Bel take it and looked at his status for the first time. A level 1. STR, 487. End, 352. DEX, 403. AGI, 468. Mag, 231. Luck, I. Abnormal resistance, I. Escape, I. Chain attack, I. Swordsman, I. Strong body, I. Magic. Firebolt. Eastray Blitz. Skills. Lyaris Freeze Bejo Zakura. Argonaut. Ox Slayer. VT. Voluntatum Kratos. Do as Animas. Bel was stumped at seeing the last two skills. He didn't quite understand what they meant. Not to mention that Lyaris Freeze was different than before. It's very fitting, you know, Zeus, that your last son would get a skill like that. Hera mocked Zeus while drinking her tea. It is disheartening, Hera, to say the least. Zeus looked at Bel with solemn eyes. I'm confused. I don't understand these last two skills, and Lyaris Freeze changed. It wasn't like that before. Bel handed the sheet back to Zeus. Let's start with the two new skills first, sweetie. The will of Kratos. My, I imagine you don't know who that is, Bel, by your lack of shock. Let me educate you, my lovely grandson. Hera took a sit on the table in front of Bel. Kratos was Zeus's old lapdog, Bel, and that's putting it kindly. When a god or goddess did something that displeased your grandfather, he would send Kratos to go and retrieve them, so that he may punish them. Hera, please . Zeus didn't want to go down memory lane, not now. Oh, maybe I should tell our little Bel the story of poor Prometheus, how you were so displeased with what they did. Hera was staring at Zeus, knowing she had the higher ground. That's enough, Hera, else we really want to start going down this road. Zeus had his own stories to tell, stories that he doubted Hera would want to come out herself. For a second the two gods just stared at each other, measuring how far each would be willing to go. So be it, Zeus, let bygones be bygones. Hera relented first, hopping off the table and making her way to the kitchen. What does the skill do, Zeus? Bel was getting nervous and didn't like how his grandparents were fighting over it. Zeus looked at his grandson, before shaking his head and reading the skill's description aloud. Voluntatum Kratos. Fills the user with an unbreakable will and an unwavering determination for victory, active and passive activation. Upon activation, raises all users' stats by a percentage of all accumulated stats, gains large resistance to mental attacks, user loses cognitive functions, user is filled with unbridled rage towards their foes. Self-activates in dire situations. When Zeus finished reading the description of the skill did he finally look up at Bel, only to be saddened as Bel was already in tears. Why would you let something so awful onto my back? That is not who I am, grandfather. Bel tried to fight back the tears, but they kept coming. The skill horrified him, and he wished for its erasure. I didn't have a choice, Bel, I'm sorry. Zeus let his head hang low. You can reject a skill . Bel refused to believe that Zeus would purposefully hurt him like that. Not if that skill manifested when you first received a Falna, Bel. Althea injected. I would know about undesirable skills, trust me. Althea said as she twirled her finger in her still warm cup of tea. She's right, Bel. The skill came to be when I first gave you my blessing. Zeus said as he tried to show some compassion towards his grandson. Why though, I've never shown that level of aggression. Bel's eyes went wide, as he remembered something. The dragon in the village. Bell recalled how he lost himself to anger, how he wanted nothing more than to kill the dragon. When you asked for my Falna, Bell, you swore you would never allow something like what happened to you to happen again in this timeline. You wanted the strength to make your dreams come true, and thus you got a skill to give you that strength. Zeus put his hands on Bell's shoulders, making Bell look at him. When you saw that dragon, when you saw how the houses were burned, how the villages were laid about the ground dead and scorched, the skill activated itself. I'm sorry, my son, I should have told you sooner. Zeus pulled Bell into an iron vice grip of hug, knowing how much the skill truly hurt Bell. That's not the worst of the skill, is it, old man? Zod asked as he started to season the tenderloin. How could that get any worse? Bell yelled out before getting some tea flicked at him from Alfea, looking at him, almost daring him to yell again. Everyone has a fight or flight instinct, Bell. Some people can learn to choose between the two over years of experiences. Your choice has been taken from you. Zeus looked Bell right in the eyes. You will fight, Bell, you will be victorious, or you will die trying. Zeus walked away to retrieve a bottle of wine and some glasses, pouring himself a glass and leaving the bottle on the table for whomever would like some. The silver lining of the self-activation part of the skill is dire situation, because only you can feel when a situation is dire enough. So, escape is still pretty useful to have, such as when you are running away from your future harem of women after they find out about each other. Zeus attempted to laugh before getting a face full of hot tea in the face courtesy of Alfea. Please keep that vulgar language to yourself, you perverted god. Alfea said as she took a glass and started pouring herself some wine. I wouldn't mind a harem of women for my grandson. Hera smiled contently. Grandma, don't be weird. Why would you want that? Bell was still adjusting to the knowledge of the skill, but there was nothing he could do about it, except trying not to use it. Well, Bell, honey, isn't it obvious? More women equal more great-grandchildren for me. Hera shrugged her shoulders as if that was common knowledge that Bell should know. Gods above, what is up with the two of you and wanting some children from me? I'm only 14. Bell was tired of hearing Zeus complain how he wasn't being active and trying to give him some grandchildren to look after. He didn't know how he could deal with both his grandparents digging at him about it. All right, let's talk about Bell's other skill. Zeus had gotten done wiping the tea from his face. Do as animas. Bell repeated the words from the sheet. 2 souls, now that's a horrible skill to have. Hera said as she sipped some wine straight from the bottle, getting an ugly look from Alfea. Bell was confused, so he looked at his grandfather for some clarity, to be surprised when Zeus looked downtrodden. Do you know what happened to my Bell? Zeus asked aloud. I am your Bell, am I not? Bell was even more confused now. You're half correct, you have in a way replaced his body and mind. Zeus started to shift around, rather uncomfortable. Do you know why Uranos called you an abomination? I assume it's because I'm not from this timeline. Bell answered to the best of his knowledge. No, that makes you an anomaly, like he said. What makes you an abomination, Bell, is that, while yes, you did replace my Bell's body and mind, you didn't replace his soul. Zeus let the statement linger in the air for a moment, allowing everyone to ingest the information. Bell's eyes widened as he realized what it meant and looked at his hands. You don't mean to tell me dash dot. You have 2 souls living inside your body right now, Bell, your soul, and this timeline's Bell's soul. Zeus said, before looking down at the description and reading it aloud. Do as animas. The user's vessel has expanded, allowing for more growth. Everyone stayed in silence, trying to process what that meant. Is that it? I imagined something more impressive, honestly. Alfea chimed in. I have to agree with Alfea. You are making it seem to be some form of skill that would change everything we understand. Zod came from the kitchen with a new bottle of wine. Leave it the children to not understand a thing. You buffoons, what does growth mean in term of the Falna? Hera wanted to smack Alfea and Zod across the back of the head. Zod and Alfea thought for a moment before coming to the same conclusion. Skills. Skills. Ding ding ding, we have ourselves winners. Hera clapped her hands together, much to the annoyance of the 2 veteran adventurers. The other 3 are correct, Bell. Do as animas is likely to expand the chance of getting new skills. It also appears to be able to change already existing skills. Zeus told Bell, finally. Moving on to the last skill. Liaris frees Bijo Zakura. Bell said solemnly. A skill born from true love, your single-minded pursuit. As Zeus said that did everyone. Look at Bell inquisitively. Oh, did you truly find love, such a pure love that a skill came from it? I didn't know you. Were such a romantic Bell. What's her name, dear? Hera smiled sweetly. Ais Wallenstein. Bell said her name, with a bittersweet tone. He knew that Ais would be different than the one he knew. He wasn't really prepared for it. Hera wanted to ask more about her, but seeing the look on Bell's face, she decided against it, for now. Bell, what is your goal? Zeus asked, knowing the answer but wanting to make sure. Bell didn't need more than a second to answer. To become stronger, to make the world stronger, to defeat the dragon and usher in a new era. Bell proclaimed loudly and proudly. Zeus smiled at hearing Bell's resolve. Your skill is still one born from true love, Bell, but now your pursuit is no longer your own. Zeus said with a grin on his face. What do you mean, Grandpa? Bell asked, but rather give a straightforward answer. Zeus. Read the last skill. Liaris frees Bijo Zakura. Fast growth as long as the user is in love. The strength of the effects corresponds with the level of the user's feelings. As a side effect, it makes the user immune to charms. New effect. Fast growth is now a ranged area. Uses the origin dictates as an ally gains. Excelia at an accelerated rate. Your single-minded pursuit, Bell, is now the world's pursuit. You will become stronger, Bell. You will make the world stronger, and you will defeat the dragon, my son, and usher in an era of peace. Zeus hugged his grandson, picking him up in excitement, dropping his status sheet, only for Althea to swipe it out of the air and examine it herself with Zod overlooking it. You know 2 spells? Althea asked, causing Zeus to stiffen and Bell to let out a groan. I don't want to talk about it. Bell said with a pout, which Hera found almost too adorable not to tease. Almost. Yeah, he does, and it's Eastray of all goddesses. Bell, you little rabbit. Hera said flirtatiously, causing Bell to blush. Grandma, stop please. Bell really didn't like his other spell. Don't stop, tell me more. Althea was interested. Well, Eastray is a goddess of spring. Her domains are crops naturally, but also human fertility. The hare is her divine animal, because you know the saying, breeding like rabbits. Is our little Bell keeping a secret from us? Maybe you do want that harem after all. Hera laughed as Bell turned red from embarrassment. Oh, come on now, leave the boy alone. He's had a rather eventful day as is. I'll get lunch started, then we'll discuss our living arrangements. Zod was rather satisfied with Bell's status all around and couldn't wait to cross blades with him. Hera groaned, but once her stomach growled, she relented and settled down in one of the chairs. Althea gave Bell his status sheet and went off to one of the bedrooms to lie down and nap. Bell and Zeus decided to get back to work on the outside. After an hour, lunch was ready to be served and Bell was sent to wake up Althea. Giving a few knocks but receiving no answer, Bell decided to let himself into the room, only to find Althea coughing into a few tissues. It didn't take long for Bell to see the blood. I didn't say to come in, Althea said as she wiped a few drops of blood from her mouth. I'm sorry, I thought you might still be asleep. Bell let his head hang low. I could barely catch any sleep, what with you and that old god stacking bricks outside. No consideration whatsoever. Althea shook her head. I'm sorry, Dashdot. You need to stop apologizing. It's unbecoming of a young man. Althea snapped while barely opening her eyes at Bell. Bell said nothing back, and for a minute there was silence. Do you mind if I sit down with you? I believe this is your room and your bed I'm lying in. You don't need my permission. Bell just nodded his head and sat down at the edge of the bed, returning to silence once again. But this time something was bothering Bell. Did I do something wrong? Bell asked suddenly. There are a lot of things that are wrong. Be more specific. Well, it's just that, when you first saw me, you were stunned and couldn't say anything. Then, when we finally had a moment together, you hugged me, and it felt nice and loving. But now, Bell wasn't sure where the two of them stood. Now I'm being distant, I'm aware, Bell. Before, I was worried about you. I was scared that Zeus was forcing this life on you, that you would end up getting hurt or worse. You are all I have left of my sister, my twin, and I couldn't stomach the fact of losing you. Althea gently placed her hand on Bell's. I've lived my entire life as an adventure. All I have ever known is fighting. Me and your mom, we were orphans, Bell, and Hera took us in and saved our lives. I'm not so prideful that I won't admit that, even though it feels like acid coming out of my mouth. I just didn't want you to live the same life as me, as a weapon wielded by the gods. Belle grasped Althea's hand and gave it a light squeeze. Most of my life was spent on a farm with Zeus. It wasn't until I was 14 that I picked up a weapon for the first time in my life. I remember my first monster I killed was a goblin. On the first floor, I was so happy and proud of myself. When I was a kid, a goblin had tried to attack me, but Grandpa saved, but I was still scared of goblins, until that day I felt good and was excited about my future. Belle smiled fondly at the memory. It felt like forever ago now. I'm sure if I was there, I would have made fun of you for killing the weakest monster in the dungeon and being proud of it. Althea gave Belle a grin of her own. I bet you would have. I know my goddess did. I rushed right back to the church we lived at and proclaimed my victory, only to be embarrassed when I was confronted about it. I ran right back down and kept on pushing. Belle laughed and was feeling happy talking to Althea. Your goddess, who was she? Althea was curious and had to admit she was feeling nice, listening to Belle tell her about his adventures. Hestia, goddess of the hearth and home. She took me in when no one else would, gave me a chance, and for that I will be eternally grateful. I gave her everything, Althea, everything I could. For me, there was no cost to anything I would have done to repay her. A single tear fell down Belle's cheek, remembering everything he and Hestia had built together, only to be surprised when Althea wiped the tear from Belle's cheek. She sounds like a much better goddess than Hera. But what do you mean no one wanted you? You look you could hold your own in the dungeon with my eyes. Belle laughed at Althea's question. Sure now, but when I first arrived in Rio, I was shorter and scrawnier. No one wanted a kid that didn't have any form of training that they would have to teach and feed. I spent a long time just trying to join Familias before Hestia came. Well, when I see her, I'll give her my thanks for giving you a place in her Familia. Althea smiled at Belle, not knowing the whole truth, but Belle knew the cold truth. That's the hard part, Althea. She hasn't descended from Tenkai yet, and won't, for a few more years. Belle's reply was hard for Althea to swallow. They both knew what it meant. You know about me, don't you, Belle? Althea questioned how much Zeus had potentially told him about herself. Zeus told me the basics, yes, that you and my mother both suffered from an incurable disease. My mother's was worse, and ultimately her pregnancy with me proved to be too much for her to bear. She lived long enough to give me a name and gave me to Zeus to raise. To tell you the truth, I didn't even know about you until I was 14, much less my mother. Grandpa always avoided the question when I was child. He avoided a lot of things now that I think about it. Belle began to rub the palm of his hands as he remembered the day Zeus had revealed himself to be alive and well after faking his own death. After a rather awkward but tearful reunion, did Zeus begin to tell Belle a lot of things about his family. Sounds like Zeus to want to avoid talking about a past that caused him grief. I'm sorry that I wasn't around, Belle. Life proved to be difficult after losing to the dragon, and then I come back to our home, and come to find out, my sister is pregnant by some idiot from Zeus' Familia, and then be forced to watch my sister begin to deteriorate day by day. I loved my sister Belle, and to watch her die, it hurt me in a way that my disease never could. She offered you to me when she still had the strength to talk, but I couldn't do it. I felt that it wasn't right. She told me of her plans to give you to Zeus instead, and I supported her decision. I left shortly after. I couldn't, or rather didn't, want to watch my sister fall apart anymore. Althea had remained somewhat collected throughout her story, but Belle saw the cracks begin to form. Slowly it began with one tear, and another followed. I wasn't there when you were born, Belle. I didn't bear witness to your first breath of air, or when you began to cry for milk. Worse of all, I wasn't even there when my sister held you for the first time, and for the last time. The baby she always dreamed of having, right there in her arms. I can only imagine the smile on her face. Althea had begun to cry. She had never spoken about this to anyone before. Belle had gotten up and moved closer to her, wrapping his arms around her as they cried together. After a moment, Althea collected herself and decided to finish her story. I remember the exact day Belle, me and Zard were moving to our new home together, when I felt it. My sister drawing her last breath, before passing away. I can't even describe the feeling that overtook me. It was like a part of my soul had been ripped from me, like a part of me was gone forever, and nothing in the world could fill it. I ran away, away from Zard, away from everything. I found myself an isolated spot in the nearby woods, and just let my anguish out, all of it, built up over weeks and months. I just let it go. Zard found me a few minutes later, surrounded by nothing. I had destroyed everything around me, leaving nothing behind. Alfia had begun crying again. Bell just waited, saying nothing but feeling the weight of the conversation bear down on him. A few weeks later, Hummus had come to find us. He came to let me know what I already knew, that my sister had passed away shortly after childbirth, and that she'd given birth to a healthy baby boy, with snow-white hair and red eyes. Alfia tenderly placed her hand on Belle's cheek, smiling. Her little Belle, what a silly name was all I thought, but I knew in my heart that I loved you. Alfia reached up and kissed Belle on the top of his head. You don't know why my mom named me that? Belle asked her as he blushed at the sign of affection. No, is there a particular reason? Alfia had never given any thought to why her sister named her son Belle. As a matter of fact, there is. Zeus had told me that when I was born, he asked my mom what she wanted to name me, and she said Belle sounds like a wonderful name, that it reminded her of you. Of me. What do you mean? Alfia had leaned back to look at Belle. Apparently, she loved the sound of your magic, that it reminded her of Belle's ringing. Belle had looked down, fondly remembering when Zeus told him the origin of his name. Belle didn't look up until he heard the sound of giggling, before Alfia began laughing happily. Belle loved the sound of it. That sounds exactly like something my sister would do. She always loved the sound of church bells, just something about them made her happy. Alfia looked at Belle with a slight smile. Thank you for telling me that, Belle. You have no idea how much that makes me happy. I hope I can continue to make you happy. I don't know what kind of relationship we're going to have, Alfia. I know I'm not the Belle you were expecting, but I hope that doesn't diminish our future together. I know that it would make me happy if we tried to have a relationship that neither of us ever really got. Belle was really hoping for the best and was relieved when he saw Alfia give him a smile. I would like that to Belle, but I must warn you. Alfia flicked Belle on the nose, knocking him off the bed. I'm a difficult woman to live with, and I'm very much so interested in your magic, so from here on out, I am now your magic tutor. We start our first lesson after lunch, and every day after that. I will whip you into the best magic caster this side of the world, and we'll also see how well you actually wield that sword. Alfia had gotten out of bed and walked around Belle, who was still nursing his nose. Alfia stopped at the doorway and looked back at Belle. You look a lot like my sister, except for those eyes of yours. I'm sure she would be happy to see you. Alfia left after comment, leaving Belle alone. Not long after that, did Belle rejoin everyone else who was already serving themselves. Soon enough, lunch was done, and there was small chatter all around. Hera kept looking at Belle the entire time, with a most mischievous grin. My little Belle, might I offer something to you? Hera asked finally, causing everyone except for Belle to give her a look of warning. Of course, Grandma, I would love something from you. Belle answered sweetly. I would like to offer you my blessing. Hera answered back almost as sweetly as Belle. Belle's eyes went wide, before Alfia grabbed him by the collar and placed him behind her. Hera, don't be absurd. Only one blessing is allowed per person. Zeus had taken his place between Hera and Belle. And I will not be releasing Belle to you. Sorry, loves, but you're too volatile. Oh, don't be so silly, Zeus. Belle is almost like an exception to that rule. The Falna is tied to a person's soul, and since our Belle has 2 souls, he should in theory be able to have 2 blessings. Hera was ignoring Zeus and Alfia, staring directly into Belle's eyes. It is ultimately Belle's decision on whether he wants to try it or not, of course. Belle was no fool. But Hera's proposition wasn't entirely a bad one. I don't know at the moment. That's a very hard decision to make on the spot, Grandma. I am rather uncomfortable with the thought of having anyone's blessing on my back other than my goddess. Zeus was really the exception. Of course, dear, take your time. But I must know, who was your goddess? Must have been someone of some remote for you to have such loyalty. Hera sipped on her wine. The goddess Hestia. Belle answered, and Hera spat her wine out. Tits with legs. Hera screamed out. That's what I said. Zeus followed behind her. Both gods would regret their decision of having an outcry, as Althea threw her fork at Hera's forehead, leaving marks in it, and Bel threw his spoon at Zeus's Adam's apple, causing the old god to choke a little. Be quiet, you annoying goddess. Grandma, please refrain from calling her that. She is my goddess, and I would very much appreciate if you gave her some respect. Bel asked nicely. Why does she get the nice voice, and I got the death aura? Zeus asked as he struggled to breath. Because grandfather, she is my grandma, and she always gets the nice voice. Oh Bel, you make your grandma so happy. At least someone here is nice to me. Hera stared daggers at Althea as she rubbed her forehead. Althea reached out and grabbed the knife in her hand. I was being nice, Hera. Althea responded in kind. Fuck's sake, if this is how lunch is, I don't even want to know what dinner is going to be. Like, Zod said as he began to pick up the dirty dishes. Let Zeus and Hera prepare dinner tonight, Zod. We have things to do. Althea said as she handed Zod her plate. Oh, let me guess, training bell. Zod raised his eyebrow at Althea. Training bell. Althea confirmed it, before pulling out Bel's status sheet. You don't have terrible stats after being an adventure for only 2 months, Bel. Althea pointed out, to which Bel scoffed. I was level 2 after a month and a half of being an adventure. I'm doing terrible, and those stats aren't even that great. I'm used to seeing them being the thousands. Bel's response almost made Zod drop the dishes he was carrying, and both Althea and Hera's eyes widened. What the fuck did you fight to level up that quickly? Zod asked as he dumped the dirty dishes in the sink as he came back to the living room. An enhanced minotaur that was trained by Otter. Bel answered without hesitation. Freya had finally confessed to Bel how much she actually interfered in his time as an adventurer, and some of the revelations were rather upsetting to say the least. Freya's little piggy. Zod asked, surprised. I mean, I guess he was becoming something. Last time I saw him, he beat your dad in a fight, Bel. Zod pointed out nonchalantly. Freya. Hera's head perked up, before getting a glare from Althea to not start. Thanks, Zod. That's a nice piece of information. Bel rubbed his forehead. Althea snapped her fingers together at that moment. I remember him. He challenged me to a duel one time, the cute little guy. I punched him through a building, knocked him right out. When he woke up, he was so embarrassed he ran away. Althea smiled at the memory. I mean, to be honest with you, Bel, your dad was the weakest member of Zeus'S Familia. Even Loki's little hero beat him in a fight. The guy was a level 4 supporter and a coward at heart. Zod shrugged at the facts. What the hell is even going on here? I don't even know my dad's name, and you're just dragging him through the mud. Bel threw his arms up in defeat. You don't know your dad's name, Bel? What the fuck, Zeus? You didn't tell him his own dad's name. Zod was Zeus a very disappointed look. Zeus threw his arms up in surrender. I just haven't told Bel yet. I felt it wasn't that important. Zeus began shrinking as everyone looked down at him. Well, thank you, Grandpa, making me feel really great about my dad. And are you talking about Findimna? Bel asked Zod as he thought about who Loki's little hero could be. Yeah, that kid. Whatever happened to him? Zod asked. He was one of the strongest adventures of my time. He was like a paragon of heroism. I looked up to him immensely. Bel was confused on where this conversation was even going. That's pretty damn cool. Zod just nodded his head. Wait, let's take a step back. My dad was the weakest member of Zeus'S Familia. As a level 4. Bel looked at Zeus. Zeus shrugged his shoulders. Your dad was one of the last children I took into my Familia, Bel. Most of his peers were already first class. Your dad wasn't really much one to fight. Yeah, because he was a peeping Tom like his god. Althea interjected with Hera nodding her head. Hey, peeping is a man's dash dot. Romance. Bel and Zod finished Zeus's famous catchphrase together. Althea raised her eyebrow at Bel, knowing that phrase, before looking at Zeus. What have you been teaching my nephew, Zeus? Althea asked as she began tapping the table. Menacingly. I concur with my daughter. What have you been teaching my grandson? Hera asked as she stood up from the table. I have spent Bel's entire life teaching him one thing, the only thing he needs to know as a man. Zeus raised his fist proudly. Every man's dream. Oh fuck. Zeus, don't say it. Zod tried to save Zeus from his foolish mistake. Too late. A man's dream of having a harem of women to make love to every night of the week. Zeus shouted out to the heavens, before having a chair broken on his head by Hera, knocking him out. Not the chair, Grandma. We only had 2 of them. Bell ran his hand through his hair. I know, sweetie. Grandma's sorry. But I had to do it. Hera held up the 2 remaining pieces of wood in her hand, before dropping them on Zeus's unconscious body. No, I know. I understand. Bell nodded his head. Bell felt a strong hand on his shoulder, looking up only to see Zod staring down at him. Hold on, now I'm curious as to what you said earlier. What do you mean you're used to having stats in the thousands? Althea leaned forward, resting her chin on her hands. Millimeter. Oh yeah, Lyris freeze allows me to go past the limit of 999. Vast majority of time when I leveled up, my agility was always over 1300. My magic stat was normally my lowest all throughout. I only had 1 spell pretty much my entire time as an adventurer. Level 4 was when I got my biggest stat increase. Bell's eyes turned dark as he remembered his time at Folkvanga, before shaking the thought out his head. I guess the apple really doesn't fall far from the tree. Althea here is also able to go past the limit. Last time I updated her Falna, her magic was sitting at a cozy 1001. Hera said smugly. Oh wow, really? That was my magic stat at level 1. Bell said happily, unknowingly, crushing Hera's pride. Althea smiled at knowing that comment probably hurt Hera's pride, but also because now she was curious how much she could push Bell's magic stat. Zod was also curious at how much punishment he could dish out to Bell. Zod? Bell asked, somewhat scared as Zod had placed his hand on Bell's shoulder, while his other hand was wielding a sword. Come on, Bell, it's time to see what you're made of, Zod said as he began dragging Bell outside to the front yard, before easily tossing Bell some meters away. When Bell balanced himself, did he see his opponent in his full glory. While Zod wasn't wearing his traditional armor, he still wielded a sword that was almost taller than Bell. That's a big sword, Bell said aloud, to which Zod smirked. That's what she dashed at. Finish that sentence, Zod, I dare you, Althea said as she took the 1 remaining chair for herself as she sat outside. Hera followed soon after with a now conscious Zeus who was holding his head. Zod coughed into his hand. Once a son of Zeus, always a son of Zeus. Zod smiled happily, thinking back to all his decades of being with Zeus, and how he was happy to train a new generation once again. Bell pulled out his own sword and took a stance. Good, you have the instinct to fight in you. From here on out, Bell, I'll be your sword master, and I'm sure Althea has already made her position known. Be prepared to go through hell with the 2 of us. We won't go easy on you. Zod gave Bell a wicked grin. I wouldn't want it any other way. Bell returned Zod's grin. He felt the surge of adrenaline, felt his heart beat faster, but he was calm. No anger was in his body, but he did feel one emotion, joy. Bell truly felt happy. He didn't know where this was all leading to. He didn't know how his relationship was going to be with Althea and Zod, nor did he know how he would deal with the knowledge he possessed. But in this moment, all of that meant nothing, and as he surged forward to cross blades with Zod, did Bell finally feel hope for a better future. 6 months later, 8 months since Bell went back in time. Winter had finished its cold hold on the earth, spring had come and gone, now the summer was here in its blistering heat. This is where we find a rather larger cabin, with more rooms than before, and where 3 people are bearing witness as a god updates his child's status. Congratulates Bell, you've hit level 3. Your options for a development ability are Mage dash dot. He'll take Mage. Althea interrupted Zeus, not caring to hearing any other options. Well, alrighty then, Zeus said as he finalized the status update on a piece of paper, before handing it to Bell. Bell looked over the status sheet. He hadn't gained any new skills since first getting his Falna, but he was still pleased, nevertheless. Still leveling slow if you ask me. Bell began to put his shirt on. Oh, don't be such a sour puss, Bell. Hitting level 3 in under a year is still groundbreaking, Zod said as he slapped Bell on the back rather hard, evident by how Bell leaned forward. The old man is right, honey. You've done really well, Hera said as she gave Bell a peck on the cheek. Grandma, stop. Bell blushed, before looking at Althea. The 2 stared at each other for a moment, before Althea took on a devilish smile. Guess I can begin to go a little harder during our training sessions, causing Bell to let out a groan as the others began to laugh. I'm going to step outside and go for a walk, get the feel of the level up. Bell said as he went for the door. Well, don't stay out till late, Bell. We have to celebrate your achievement. Zeus yelled out. He and Zod had gone to the village back down south to pick up some bottles of wine and other supplies to make a celebration. All right, Grandpa, just a quick run through the gauntlet. Bell said as he stepped outside, before walking over the edge of the valley and jumped down. Zod and him had spent the spring building an arena for Bell to challenge whenever he had a day off. As Bell slid down the face of the cliff, his first target came into sight. With a slash of his sword did the steel target go back down. The second came even faster. Target after target came up only for Bell to put it down. Bell hit the ground of the valley running. The second phase was beginning. This one Alfea had made. Firebolt. Bell flung his go-to spell at the ranged target, before seeing the second one pop up, even further away. Firebolt. Bell imbued his sword with the spell, before slashing the air, sending a slash of fire at the target, incinerating it. Bell grinned. Alfea had drilled into him a lot of things about magic that he never would have thought of before. Bell was on the last stage of the gauntlet, the battle uphill. This stage combined the close quarters combat Zod had taught, along with the range combat Alfea instructed him in. It didn't take long for Bell to rush through the final leg of his trial, recalling how long it had taken him when he was level 1 to complete it, then level 2, and now as a fresh level 3. He blew his previous record out of the water. As Bell reached the top of the valley, he stood over it, looking out into the distance, wondering what kind of monsters lie further in. His slow leveling had been mostly due to his guardian's reluctance to allow him to travel further into Dragon Valley to seek stronger monsters, but hopefully now things will be different. Bell couldn't help but feel happy. Life was going well, and everything seemed at peace for just that moment. But like all good things, they have to come to an end, and it started with a clap. Bell's eyes widened at the noise behind him. Someone snuck up on me. Bell grit his teeth and turned around, hand on his sword, only to see a young-looking man riding atop a black horse. He had black hair with a big gray in it. His eyes were gray as well, but held an intensity in them that made Bell nervous. A black jacket with a white shirt and a purple tie that hung around his neck, followed by black pants and a single black glove on his left hand. Whoa, easy there, young man. I mean no harm, only giving you your congratulations. I couldn't help but watch your rather impressive display of swordsmanship and magic. The unknown man's words sounded like honey. Bell quickly unhanded his sword and gave a light bow. I thank you, good sir, but I must ask, what brings you so far north? Bell was curious what a well-dressed man as himself could be doing alone up here. Isn't that a most fascinating question? I have an inkling you might know. See, I'm looking for two people that have proved to be most difficult to find. The man gave Bell a smile that sent a shiver down his spine. But I am also very curious about you. I've heard a great many things about you on my way up north. I think who you're hoping to find might prove to be more difficult than you're expecting. Bell didn't know who this person was, but he was sure to find out soon enough. Oh, I am sure of that, little hero. The man's honeyed words turned poisonous, and his smile took on a devilish look. Level 3. STR 1103-0. End 1346-0. Dex 1258-0. AGI 1487-0. Mag 1049-0. Luck H. Abnormal resistance I. Escape I. Chain attack G. Swordsman G. Strong body G. Hunter H. Mage I. Chapter end notes. That's right, folks. To those who know exactly who that was at the end of the chapter, should have a good guess as to what is going to be the first arc of this story. To those who don't know, that man is the Lord of Chaos, the man with a plan, the fucking god of drip himself. Erebus. The first arc of this story starts next big chapter. The war arc. Our boy Bell is going to Ororio much sooner than he thought as he goes sword in hand to fight during the great feud of Ororio, where he gets to meet everyone, save for a few people from his past. Most of all, he gets to meet Best Mom and her Familia. Astrea Familia. Hopefully next chapter comes out much sooner than this one. Now, I won't do this very often, but I will let y'all pick a route this story can go. Should Bell accept Hera's offer to join her Familia, or should he reject it? I will put it to a Vote today, November 15th, 2023, and by November 22nd, 2023, I will end the vote. And if enough people say yes, I will write the story in that direction. P.S. To those who care, Sally the horse was not in this chapter. That's a oopsie on my end. But she is fine. Belle and Zeus built her a nice shed where she can be comfortable. On the topic of Belle's level, because I know that there will be some questions. 2 things. 1. Belle will have a hard time finding monsters that will get him to the next level. It is stated in canon that monsters outside the dungeon aren't as strong. That's partly why Belle decided to go to Dragon Valley, where monsters are strong and are comparable to dungeon monsters, to an extent. 2. Story reasons. I can't just make Belle go to Rio as some level 12 demigod. I do have to follow some path, so Belle might stay at a level for years before he can find something that'll push him to that next level. Hint hint, Artemis is in the tags for a reason. I can say that Belle will go to Rio as a fucking beast, but that's for later. On to Belle's skills, which might cause some controversy, which is fair. I like Belle's new skills. I think tying in the legend of Kratos is awesome for Belle as a son of Zeus. As for the change in Lyra's freeze, I think it's a nice change, because Belle has changed as a person and his goals have also changed, so why shouldn't his most powerful skill change with him? I hope you enjoyed the chapter, and as always, till next time. End notes. So I'm writing this story for a myriad of reasons, but the biggest is that the story so far is more than halfway done, and Belle still has so much work to do. Like in less than 6 months. Belle has to beat the dungeon, and then beat the dragon. How Amori is going to do it is beyond me, but I'm sure we'll get a rather good ending to the story, hopefully. Personally, that's a tall order, and seems like a lot of things can go wrong, which in my story they did. Everything went wrong, and Belle and company lost their battle. So why did Belle get sent back so many years? Well, the ending of the chapter kind of does that question justice. But more than that, this gives Belle time to gather allies and whatnot from all across the world, which is mostly passed on in the main story and Sword Oratoria, so that gives me a chance as the author of this story to really flesh out the lore of the world and introduce characters that don't exist in the main timeline. Hopefully I pull it off well enough and this story starts to go somewhere. I will be trying to post regular updates on the weekly, but we never know what life may throw at us. Thank you for reading my first chapter of this new story, and I hope you'll stick around for more to come. Please drop by the archive and comment to let the creator know if you enjoyed their work. This would be all for this story. Next story coming, so please like and subscribe to get informed as soon as the next part drops.